What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto trained by female Kyuubi for Chunin exams? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Within the endless wetlands which were surrounding Omegacure, there was a lone building, sheathed in eternal darkness. Not even the most hardened shinobi would willingly step foot within its boundaries. Of course, the cracked skulls lying around didn't help to ease their worries. Unbeknownst to all affected parties, there was a meeting going on inside the room. A meeting which would change the fate of the entire world, which was ironically the exact opposite of what the two shinobi within the room wanted. Inside the meeting room, two darkened visages were staring across at each other from the table. "Has it been done?" one of the men asked, hardening his coiled eyes as he played with a lock of blonde hair. "It has been done. We will soon be gods among men." The remaining man cackled, raising his head as if to reveal his demonic eyes to the world. "All we have to do now is wait," he grinned, causing his companion to narrow his eyes even further. "This isn't like you." He frowned as the sudden realization hit him. "You're in it for yourself." He raised his hand and flicked a gold kunai towards his sinister partner, relishing the sound of the kunai flying through flesh. "I will not have a weak link in my organization." He glared down at his dead companion, before he moved his hands up to form a hand seal. Little did he know, his actions had sealed his fate. For better or for worse, there was no backing out. 1 week later, chaos, the beginning, ending, and catalyst of all. It could not be completely avoided, nor easily dispersed. Unfortunately, chaos would be invoked on this day. A large fox nearly 50 meters in length walked into a humongous cave. It seemed to be humming, its rose-colored eyes looking around as it walked. Finally, the fox reached the point where the cave stopped, and its eyes widened in shock. The cave was smeared with blood, and there was a lone man standing at the edge of it. The same man who had been killed in a meeting near Omegacure. He turned around with a grin, his eyes flickering between onyx and crimson. Finally, his eyes settled on a compromise. His iris was pure crimson, and there was a black ring within it, connecting to 3 hollow, onyx circles. In the middle of the ring was the pupil, nearly half the size of a regular pupil. "Well, if it isn't the Kyuubi." He laughed, as his sinister chakra began to seep out. "I'm sure you know that this is strictly a business call. I'm afraid that you're—" He looked towards the blood with a frown. "Brother got in my way. Nothing personal." The Kyuubi was about to run towards the intruder in rage. Yet when the Kyuubi tried to move, it found itself unable to. "Oh, no." The intruder spoke softly, his malevolent smile visible through his voice. "I'm afraid that I have to live. Not as if you can stop me, can you?" He grinned, revealing perfectly white teeth. "Either way, I'm afraid we don't have much time." The man mused, before grinning again. "I guess you'll just have to take my revenge for me." He cackled as he disappeared, leaving a stunned Kyuubi in his wake. The Kyuubi finally came back to its senses, and revealed a grin just as malevolent as the intruder. At that point, its beautiful maroon fur became pure crimson, as its eyes became dark nearly to the point where they were black. 1 month later, Namikaze Minato, the 4th Hokage, commonly known as the Yondaime. His predecessor, Sarutobi, held him in the highest regards, as his successor, and as his friend. Minato felt the same way about his predecessor, even if he was less vocal about it. Yet, there was one aspect of his personality which everybody feared: his selflessness. Minato would gladly risk his life for his village, something which many people admired. At this point, however, it drove Sarutobi insane. "Please Minato," Sarutobi pleaded, "let me seal the Kyuubi. You're still young and your son will live without me," Minato adamantly replied, his blue eyes holding a mixture of sadness and determination. "He won't be happy," Sarutobi yelled. "Just let me do it. I'm going to die either way." "No." Minato brushed a clump of blonde hair away from his face, as he stared at Sarutobi. "I won't let another person's life be taken unless I can help it. That's my nindo, old man." Sarutobi chuckled for a moment. "Here I am, trying to convince the most stubborn man in the universe to abandon his village. I won't stop you." Sarutobi finally gave in. "I just hope you understand, the villagers won't treat Naruto half as nicely as you want." Minato snorted derisively. "Of course they will. Not even Danzo would think to go against my last wishes, would he?" I wonder, Sarutobi muttered. Minato gazed down at his handiwork, the seal adorning his son's stomach. At that moment, an Anbu rushed in, barely managing to keep his emotions in check. Yondaime-sama, the Kyuubi is almost at our walls. Minato slowly tore his gaze away from his son. Alright, head back to the defense. I'll be out soon. Hi, the Anbu acknowledged, as he formed a seal, disappearing in a whirlwind of leaves. I still don't understand where the hell the leaves come. Minato laughed sadly. I guess it's off to the front lines for us, old man. His voice faltered for a moment. Take care of him, alright? I don't want. Sarutobi, sensing the dread behind Minato's words, swiftly cut him off. I'll do what I can. Let's go. The two of them, along with Naruto, set off towards the edge of the forest. 3 hours later, Minato gritted his teeth in frustration. Finally, realizing he had no other option, he bit his right thumb and began to form hand seals. Kachiyose no Jutsu. Minato thrust his right hand onto the ground as seals extended from it. A large explosion occurred as the leaf shinobi struggled to get out of the way. Finally, as the smoke cleared, Minato was on top of a humongous toad, which was nearly as tall as the Kyuubi itself. Minato, you know who that is, right? Gamabunta, the toad boss asked, his commanding voice booming through the area. I know, Oyabun, Minato sighed. Sarutobi leapt up onto the large toad, and solemnly handed Naruto into Minato's waiting arms. No words were exchanged between the two, as Minato gave a weak smile to Sarutobi. I need you to distract the Kyuubi. Gamabunta whistled in amazement. I can do a lot of things. 15 minutes, Minato cut him off. That's all I need. Gamabunta nodded, and he began to fight the fox. Throughout the fight, Naruto kept his eyes closed, as he breathed calmly. Almost as if he knew that the encounter would end favorably. Minato began rapidly moving his hands to form numerous seals, and had entered a trance at some point. When he had nearly completed all of the seals required to forever bind the Kyuubi, Gamabunta let out a cry, almost breaking his concentration. Minato gritted his teeth and continued to seal, until he finally reached the last seal. At this point, Naruto had opened his blue eyes and began to loudly cry, attracting the attention of the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi looked curiously at Naruto, its eyes widening for a brief moment as its fur flickered between maroon and crimson. Shiki Fujin, Minato cried out, as the Kyuubi's eyes widened, breaking the evil hold which had been placed upon it. A loud crack of thunder ensued, followed by the calling of a booming voice. Who has summoned me? I have. Minato winced, suffering from chakra exhaustion. Regardless, he pushed through, exhausting his mental barriers completely. For what purpose? The Shinigami asked, its black robes extended over all its limbs, save for a literally bony hand. Seal the Kyuubi into this boy. I understand the price. Minato croaked, at his limit. The Kyuubi stared on in terror, as the Shinigami inspected Naruto. Most interesting. It drew its head up to look at Kyuubi. For the record, I'm sorry. The Kyuubi slightly inclined its head in response. It seems that Kami wills this to happen. The Shinigami finished. After the pause, the Shinigami brought its scythe down with a resounding crack, and the Kyuubi's essence began to leak into the boy, from its tails, to the boy's seal. Finally, after an excruciating wait, the Kyuubi completely vanished into the boy, and whisker marks began to form on his cheeks. Minato looked at Sarutobi for a moment. Keep him safe? He croaked, tell those two. The Shinigami looked upon their exchange for a moment, before he swiveled his head to face the two of them. It is time. We cannot delay any longer, Namikaze Minato. Rest assured that your boy shall accomplish great things. Minato weakly grinned at the Shinigami, as its scythe descended upon him, forcibly ripping its soul out from him. As an afterthought, the Shinigami spoke to Sarutobi as well. I'll see you in 13 years. He nodded. Until then. 4 years later, Naruto looked over his shoulders as he ran, his blue eyes wide in fear. It was his birthday, right? So why was he running? Why wasn't he getting presents and hugs from his parents? I know have any, his inner skeptic remarked, utilizing his limited vocabulary to its full extent. Naruto began to pick up speed and he sharply turned into an alleyway at the last second, using it as a shortcut to get away from the villagers. To his credit and luck, half of the villagers slammed into the wall, or past the alley, while the other half kept chasing him. Naruto brushed a bead of sweat away from his forehead, disturbing his blonde locks in the process. Had to quickly? He picked up his speed again until his limbs were nearly screaming in protest. Naruto gave an exhausted grin as he saw the light signaling the end of the alley, when he stopped in fear. Standing in his path were at least 15 villagers, some of them shinobi by the looks of it. Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat as he tried to run in the other direction, to no avail. Naruto looked between the two advancing groups and he curled himself into a ball and closed his eyes. "Ah, is the little demon afraid?" one of the villagers mocked. "Well, there's no getting out of this." Another villager laughed as he was kicked in the ribs. Naruto's eyes widened in shock and he coughed up a gob of blood. The villagers were encouraged by this, and began to beat him even further, nearly to an inch of his life. Finally, one of the shinobi took their kunai and jabbed it into his chest, barely missing his heart. Time began to slow down for Naruto. He coughed up an immense amount of blood, as his chakra began to leak out. The villagers backed away in fear, leaving Naruto to die alone. Naruto was awoken by the incessant dripping of small water droplets. He didn't know when he'd passed out, nor how, he only knew that he was no longer awake. He groaned as he got up, still sore from the beating he'd taken. Finally, after he'd stood, Naruto looked around in shock. There were iron pipes everywhere, marked with a tinge of rust. Underneath the pipes, there were several doorways which all had unreadable words above them. Naruto finally noticed the largest opening and the light that was shining through it. He tentatively took a step towards the opening, and continued on, managing to keep a brave facade. Naruto finally stopped in front of a large cage, with openings the width of Naruto between the stainless steel bars. In the middle of the opening, there was a piece of paper with unrecognizable words, overlaying a huge keyhole. Naruto slowly approached the cage, unable to see anything within its dark depths. He wondered who, or what, was in there. Almost as if answering his question, the inside of the cage began to light up, revealing a large nine-tailed fox with sleek maroon fur. It slowly opened its eyelids, revealing entrancing, rose-colored eyes. Naruto suddenly found himself standing in front of the cage, staring into the fox's eyes. He tried to move away, but to no avail. His feet were firmly rooted to the ground, as he stared into its eyes. "So, you're finally here," the fox commented, its powerful voice filling the room. "Who?" Naruto tried to search for the right words. "Who? You?" The fox stared at Naruto for a moment. It paused, searching for the right words. "A friend. You be my friend?" Naruto grinned, unafraid of the fox. He suddenly realized something, though. "You know human?" The fox seemed to deflate, almost as if it were sighing. "Yes, I will be your friend." "No, I'm not a human." "Does it matter?" Naruto grinned. "No." He paused for a moment, remembering how the other kids would introduce themselves. "I Naruto." "I know," the fox responded. "I suppose my name would be Kara Hitomi." Naruto gasped in awe. "Pretty name." Hitomi chuckled, unable to tell Naruto the truth. She knew it would be detrimental for him not to know, but he deserved to be a child, didn't he? Naruto finally spoke again, breaking the small awkward silence which had fallen. "But I demon." "No," Hitomi bellowed, scaring Naruto to no end. She suddenly noticed what effect her yelling had, and she softened her tone. "You're not a monster. I don't think anybody else would be able to hold out as long as you." Naruto blinked uncertainly for a moment and a lone tear fell from his eye. "Why they beat me? They're afraid," Hitomi sighed. "Why?" Naruto sat down on the dusty ground, almost as if he knew that it would be a long tale. "They were hurt by somebody very close to you," she replied carefully. "That doesn't matter though. She paused for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "You need to learn." "Learn? To read, write, and think," Hitomi explained. "I'm going to turn you into the greatest prodigy this village has ever seen." Naruto grinned when he suddenly felt a tugging sensation. The world seemed to spin around him, until he woke up again, staring into the red eyes of a girl his age. "Are you alright?" she asked, staring down at Naruto in concern. Naruto's eyes widened as he took in her appearance. She had long, black hair which traversed to the middle of her back. Her pale skin was contrasted by her barely visible blush, in addition to her full red lips, delicate eyebrows, and wry smile. When she noticed that he wasn't replying, she sighed. I asked you a question. Naruto frowned. Fine. She looked at Naruto, unconvinced, before she offered her hand to him. You need some food. Come on, I'll treat you. She grinned, and Naruto obediently took her hand and followed her. The pair stopped in front of a stall, which had the words, Ichiraku's Ramen, adorning the top of it. Naruto hesitantly walked in, afraid he'd be thrown away again, when the old man at the counter welcomed the two of them. Ah, Natsuko-san, how's Shisui-kun doing? He's doing well, Natsuko grinned, but enough of that. How about 2 miso ramen? Of course, and for you? The old man asked Naruto, looking carefully at him. When the old man recognized Naruto, he cut himself off. Never mind, we'll give you 1 miso ramen on the house, young man. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, and a small tear escaped from his eye. He quickly wiped it away before any of them could see, and he nodded furiously. The old man laughed, and he put 3 miso ramen on the counter. So, what's your name? Natsuko asked Naruto as he quickly devoured his bowl of ramen. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. He grinned, feeling a lot better. I'm Uchiha Natsuko. She returned Naruto's grin with one of her own, as she devoured her own 2 bowls of ramen. -8 years later, present. I'll tell you the truth, Mizuki grinned, as he took a large shuriken off of his back. Don't do it, Mizuki. Naruto's sensei, Iruka cried out, blood spilling from his mouth. A rule was created after an incident 12 years ago, Mizuki explained, a sadistic grin worming itself onto his face. A rule that only you can't be told about. Is he talking about that rule? Naruto mentally asked his companion. I think so, Hitomi snarled within Naruto's mindscape. You have to act surprised, alright? It's a matter of life or death. The Kyuubi, Mizuki finished, waiting for Naruto's reaction. To their surprise, Naruto kept a stoic face on, and he stared at Mizuki for a moment before bursting into laughter. I am sorry, he managed between breaths. Did you just call the dead last of the academy? Naruto grinned, as he brought his index and middle fingers together to form a cross-shaped seal. The Kyuubi? Are you retarded? That's exactly what I said. Mizuki yelled, annoyed that Naruto thought it was a joke. Well you see, Mizuki Temi. Naruto began to circulate his chakra. I wouldn't give a crap even if I was the Kyuubi itself. Iruka and Mizuki both looked at Naruto in shock as he summoned well over 100 clones. Alright guys, Naruto cheerfully cried. It's time to kick his ass into next year. The multitudes of Narutos all cracked their fists with sadistic grins, as they charged Mizuki. Throughout the night, there were pained cries reverberating through the forest. After the beating was done, a masked shinobi returned to the Hokage Tower to make a report. At the crack of dawn, an exhausted Naruto was slumped against a tree, his breathing labored while he slept. Iruka looked at Naruto, proud to say that he'd taught the boy. Finally coming to a decision, Iruka quietly untied his headband, and placed it on Naruto's forehead. Naruto opened his eyes slowly, squinting at the bright sunlight. Ah, geez, so tired, he muttered, absent-mindedly scratching his forehead. Naruto immediately snapped awake when he felt the soft metal of the ninja headband, and he touched his forehead in shock. A headband? But that means… Congratulations, Naruto, Iruka grinned. You're now a genin. See Kit? I knew you could do it. Hitomi proudly smiled inside her landscape. A warm feeling was blossoming out of her chest. A warm feeling she hadn't felt for ages. Iruka-sensei. Naruto spoke in hushed tones for a moment, before a huge grin appeared on his face. Thank you so much. Iruka chuckled lightly, it's no big deal. The way I see it, you're overqualified. His face suddenly turned stern. You can't prank anybody anymore, Naruto. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Come on, sensei. I'm going to be the next Hokage. Do you really think I could afford to lose the favor of my people? Iruka chuckled lightly. Why would you want to be the Hokage when everybody hates you? It's not a matter of losing their favor. Iruka grinned, it's a matter of gaining it. Naruto gave Iruka a thumbs-up gesture, and he winked. I won't fail, Iruka-sensei. Just think about it. Soon you'll be able to tell everybody you trained the Hokage. His smile suddenly faded. Despite his being a demon, he spat, nearly choking on the words. What are you talking about, Naruto? Iruka nervously laughed. Mizuki was just trying to lower your guard. It's not as if he was telling the truth. Indeed, Sarutobi landed beside Iruka. He was pretty scared of you. I'm just repeating what the villagers say, Naruto soberly replied. They just don't know how awesome you are, Sarutobi grinned. Thanks, Gigi. Naruto lightened up considerably. His stomach loudly rumbled, and he rubbed his head, embarrassed. Tell you what, Naruto? Iruka checked his wallet before continuing. I'll treat you to ramen as congratulations. Seriously? Naruto's grin nearly took up his entire face. What are we waiting for? Let's go. Naruto leapt onto a tree and immediately jumped his way to the village, scaring numerous birds in the process. I think the late Yondaime might have some competition for his nickname, Iruka laughed. The orange flash, eh? Sarutobi replied, while bounding after Naruto. It doesn't do him justice. I hope you're watching over him, Minato. In no time, the trio reached Ichiraku Ramen, ran by Ichiraku Tuchi and his daughter, Ichiraku Ayame. What can I get for my favorite customer? Tuchi asked, as soon as he saw Naruto. Naruto seemed thoughtful for a moment. I'll have 3 miso ramen, 5 pork ramen, and 1 beef special to start off. Iruka glumly looked at his wallet, as he handed Tuchi the money. Ayame handed Naruto his ramen and seemed to notice his headband. Naruto, is that yours? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. Of course, Ayame-ne-chan. Naruto proudly grinned before digging into his ramen. In no time, the ramen was finished, leaving Sarutobi and Iruka to stare at Naruto in awe, shock, and fear. I'm pretty sure that's not good for you. Hitomi clutched her stomach in pain. But, it's ramen, Naruto pointed out, sending her a mental glare. Hitomi's comeback was interrupted when Natsuko entered the booth and glared at Naruto. Where were you? She demanded, glaring at Naruto. Sorry about that, Natsu-chan, Naruto grinned. I had to take out the trash. It's Hikari, Natsuko corrected. I told you, I'm not keeping that name anymore. Naruto immediately sobered up, his infectious smile dying from its place. Sorry about that, Hikari-chan? It's all right. Hikari sighed and sat down beside Naruto, wondering why she had to lose everything. Flashback, a pair of red eyes met a conflicting pair of red eyes in the rain. Both seemed to match each other, carrying a pinwheel in place of the pupil. Itachi. Natsuko's frown deepened and Naruto looked at her in concern. Natsuko, Itachi nodded, sheathing his bloody sword. He looked at her for a moment and sighed. I'll leave you be. For the memory of Shisui. Natsuko's eyes widened immensely. It was you? The council, Itachi coolly replied, as he glanced at Naruto. He seemed to be in deep thought for a moment, before he returned his gaze to Natsuko. You should disguise yourself. If they know that both you and Sasuke are alive, you will lose any chance at a normal life. Why? Why did you do it? Natsuko asked, nearly in a catatonic state. Naruto looked at her and reassuringly placed his hand on hers, when she began to waver. I've lost all hope for this pathetic clan, Itachi replied. They were about to launch an attack against Konoha. He imperceptibly shifted his posture when he noticed that Natsuko's anger wasn't dissolving. To top it off, they planned to kill Naruto. It's not right. Natsuko cried, you could have at least let the kids live. Itachi released a deep sigh and began to form seals. Before his seals finished, he replied, right and wrong are simply concepts. There is neither true right nor true wrong. The Uchiha clan thought it was wrong when they were surpassed by others of a different clan. The Hyuga main family thought it was right to curse their branch family. I only tell you this for your sake, and for your late brother's. Make him proud. He always did say that you were like a light in his life. As soon as Itachi finished his words, he disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves. Naruto looked at Natsuko and shook her lightly. Natsuko-chan, we have to leave. I see? Natsuko frowned and lowered her head for a moment. She suddenly raised her head in pure determination. Today marks the end of Uchiha Natsuko. She picked up a small kunai and cut her finger, letting droplets of blood fall to the ground. And the beginning of Uzumaki Hikari. Naruto gave Hikari a brief smile, and they quickly ran away from Uchiha grounds, leaving a collapsed boy in the rain. End flashback. Naruto and Hikari were about to walk out of the stall, when Sarutobi stopped them. Naruto, Hikari, I have some news for you. What is it? Naruto turned around and asked Sarutobi, as he cleared his throat. You two will be on the same team, with Uchiha Sasuke. Naruto's eyes narrowed, and Hikari clenched her hand. Relax, I'm sure there's a reason. Why? Hikari asked, beating Naruto to the chase. Don't you think it'd be a bad idea? His team was the only one open, Sarutobi replied with a sigh. I understand your feelings towards him, but we should get over them, because feelings don't make a shinobi. Naruto rolled his eyes. Thanks, Oji-san. At least you told us. Sarutobi nodded, and Iruka turned to him with a frown plastered on his face. Are you sure it's for the best? I'm afraid so. Kakashi will have to instruct them in the Sharingan, regardless of her unwillingness to use it. Sarutobi solemnly replied, before lightening up. Could I get another miso? Of course, Hokage-sama, Tucci answered, as he rushed to make the ramen. Iruka sighed. Can you really blame her for not wanting to use the Mangekyu? It is the reason that her brother died. I don't blame her, Sarutobi reassured Iruka. I want her to be the best that she can be. Shinobi don't become the best if they live by their emotions. I'm going to have to disagree with you, Hokage-sama? Iruka replied, mustering as much courage as he could. I think that emotions are all that save us from becoming killing machines. Sarutobi gave Iruka a small nod. It's true, but your opponent is more likely to manipulate these emotions. Which will cause you to try your hardest, Iruka responded, causing Sarutobi to grin. The next morning, the sun began its slow ascent over the horizon, causing a very irate Naruto to wake up. I hate the sun, he mumbled as he began to get ready. His eyes widened when he remembered the Hite on his dresser. Naruto tied it on his forehead and grinned, revealing strikingly long canine teeth. Alright, let's do this. Naruto decided to forego the door, jumping out of the window instead. He began to jump across rooftops in a yellow blur, as he rushed towards the academy. Finally, Naruto managed to get into the classroom somewhat early. All conversation stopped as Naruto walked in, and sat down beside Hikari. Hikari gave Naruto a small smile, and the two of them went back to daydreaming. Hey Dobi, didn't you hear? This class is for genin only, Sasuke called out. Naruto laughed and turned towards Sasuke. Hey Temi, didn't you hear? I completed a B-rank mission and I was promoted. Or did you not notice my Hite? Everybody burst out laughing at this, and Sasuke began to blush. As if you could complete a B rank, he scoffed. You're the Dobi of the class and I'm Rookie of the Year. Naruto grinned. Well, I can see two problems there. First of all, you're Rookie of the Year. His grin widened when he saw Sasuke began to fume. Second of all, if they say you're the best shinobi this year, then their standards are too low. Sasuke was about to retort when Iruka walked in and slammed the door behind him. Alright, starting today, you are now genin. Iruka winked at Naruto, who was sitting in his chair. Due to this, you will be put in teams of 3, along with a Chunin sensei. Remember, you may have made it through the academy, but it's a different world out there. Don't worry about it, sensei. Kiba called out. Me and Akamaru can take on anything. The dog which was sitting atop Kiba's head yipped proudly, showing that it completely believed Kiba's words. Iruka looked at Kiba for a moment. Kiba, let me tell you something. Pride will do nothing except get you killed. He softened of a moment. Or irreparably injured. Sounds like he has some experience in that area, Hitomi commented. It can't be helped, Naruto responded. Like he said, it's a different world out there. Anyways, let me tell you what your teams are. Iruka grinned as he picked up a piece of paper and began reading from it. Team 7. Uzumaki Naruto, Uzumaki Hikari, and Uchiha Sasuke. Your team will be taught by Hitaki Kakashi. Sasuke's eyes narrowed and Hikari clenched her hand into a fist underneath the desk. At this point, Naruto tuned out, ignoring the rest of the teams. Team 7 sat in their desks, waiting for well over 3 hours. Finally, a silver-haired man walked into the room. He wore a mask which covered the bottom half of his face, and his Hite overlapped with his mask, completely covering his left eye. Alright Team 7, let's go to the roof. He disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving the 3 of them to walk up on their own. Naruto grudgingly pushed in his chair and went to the roof with Hikari in pursuit. After a minute, Sasuke followed the 2 of them. Finally, they reached the roof, where they were met by Kakashi. So, why don't you introduce yourselves? What do you mean? Could you demonstrate? Naruto asked, throwing his hands up in defeat. Alright, I'm Hitaki Kakashi. I have no intention of telling you my likes or dislikes, and as for my dream, I have few hobbies, he replied, skillfully evading their questions. You next, Blondie. Naruto grinned. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, training, and Hikari-chan. I dislike ramen's waiting time, hypocrites, and presumptuous idiots. My dream, Naruto paused for a moment, it's a secret. Kakashi stared at Naruto for a moment. Alright, next. I'm surprised he said nothing about being a Hokage. Hikari sighed, I'm Uzumaki Hikari. I like ramen, training, and Naruto-kun. I dislike shortcuts, egoists, and those who gain acknowledgement for their birth and not work. My dream is. She paused and looked at Naruto for a moment. My dream is to allow my brother's memory to rest in peace. Kakashi frowned imperceptibly underneath his mask. She's interesting, but I didn't know Naruto had a sister. Alright, your turn. Sasuke sighed. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are many things I hate, and there aren't a lot of things I like. Also, I have an ambition which I have no intention to leave is just a dream. The revival of the Uchiha clan, of which I am the last living member in Konoha, and to kill a certain man. Hikari's clenched her fist even more, until her knuckles were red. After taking in a silent breath, she released all the tension from her hand. You three have unique personalities? Kakashi sighed after a moment. Just my luck. I end up with 2 enigmas and an Avenger. Anyways, tomorrow we have a mission. We'll be partaking in a test, to see if you are worthy of being genin. Meet me at Training Ground 7 at 5 a.m. Kakashi stood on the railing and prepared to jump. Oh, and don't eat anything unless you want to puke. As soon as he finished his sentence, Kakashi jumped towards the Hokage tower to hand in a report. Hokage-sama, I'd like to request some information on one of my team members, Kakashi requested, looking Sarutobi in the eye. Sarutobi put the report down and looked at Kakashi. Which team member would that be? Hikari? Kakashi rubbed his head sheepishly. You already knew? I must be getting bad at hiding these things. It was obvious. Naruto and the Uchiha are self-explanatory, Sarutobi explained. Whereas to you, Hikari seems to be an enigma, one who evokes lots of interest in you. Sarutobi sighed as he took his pipe out of his mouth. I'm afraid I'll have to deny your request. But Hokage-sama, Kakashi protested, I need to know the strengths and weaknesses of my team. They're your team, right? Either way, I'll tell you this much. Hikari and Naruto loathe Sasuke. They will do anything to stay away from Sasuke, and Sasuke would easily sacrifice any of them in a second. Sarutobi chuckled at that. If he could, sir? Kakashi asked, somewhat surprised. Hikari and Naruto. They worked together far better than most Chunin would. Sarutobi took a stack of paper out of his desk and handed it to Kakashi. In fact, if they tried, they could easily take down any of the Chunin in Konoha, or even Kiri. Kakashi's eyes widened. Hokage-sama, this is, exactly. They've managed to complete many missions, despite their lack of clearance, Sarutobi grinned. On a lesser note, you may want to have witnesses to the test you will be providing. Kakashi's ite dropped, indicating that Kakashi was furrowing his brows. His eyes suddenly widened. They're going to. You'll need witnesses to prove it to the council, unless you want calls for your resignation. God knows how they feel about the last Uchiha, Sarutobi grimaced in anger and pity. Of course, Hokage-sama. Thank you for your time. Kakashi nodded and brought his hands up to form a seal. Kakashi, treat those 2 as Minato treated you. Kakashi nodded and disappeared in a whirlwind of leaves, causing many of the papers which were neatly stacked on the desk to go flying. Sarutobi sighed as he looked at the mess. I hate the paperwork, he grumbled, as he began to pick up all the paper and sort it. Meanwhile, Naruto and Hikari were heading towards Ichiraku's for their daily nourishment. So, what's your opinion of Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked, completely aware that Hikari was still fueled by anger. He's a good man, Hikari replied, surprising Naruto. He's gone through lots of pain, you can see it by the look in his eye. It's also evident in his posture, his voice, and the way he treats us. I know he's gone through lots of pain. We all have. Naruto sighed. The question is, why does that make him a good man? He's trying not to repeat his mistakes with us, Hikari replied. A frown formed on her face. I think, he has the Sharingan. Naruto's eyes widened. Would that be a good thing, or a bad thing? Either or, Hikari replied. I think you can guess why. Because that means the Hokage hopes she'll reveal the Sharingan to Kakashi, Hitomi explained, as she stretched her paws out. Back to sleep for me. Oh, Naruto sighed, I really am naive, aren't I? Hikari grinned as she ruffled his hair. You're not naive. Think about the last Uchiha. Naruto burst out laughing and he attempted to imitate Sasuke. I want to kill a certain man. Hikari laughed and began to imitate Sakura. Oh, Sasuke-kun. I love you so much. Behind the pillar, Kakashi nearly burst out laughing. As it was, he snorted loudly, allowing Naruto and Hikari to know that he was there. Despite that, he still kept on following them, intent on seeing why the Hokage wouldn't reveal any information on Hikari. So, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto grinned, and Kakashi froze in place. Heard anything interesting? Well, Kakashi came out from behind the pillar and calmly replied, I heard your opinion of Sasuke. I don't suppose that it's wrong? Hikari winked at him, as the two of them reached Ichiraku's. I'd have to say you're being too nice, Kakashi replied with a laugh. You wouldn't mind if I joined you? Not at all, Naruto replied. The more the merrier. Kakashi smiled, glad that Naruto was willing to let him in. Thanks, Naruto-kun. It's no problem, Naruto laughed. If I can get one more person addicted to ramen, Tuchi-san will give me free ramen for a month. A small bead of sweat began to form on the back of Kakashi's head, and he laughed. Sorry to disappoint you, but I've been here a lot of times. With my old teammates. Don't worry about it, sensei, Hikari patted him on the shoulder. I don't think they'd want you to be so sullen about it. What do you mean? Kakashi looked at Hikari in interest. You know, you seem to have an almost inhumane perception. Well, you know what they say. Women are from Venus, aren't we? Wouldn't I know it? A white-haired man commented, as he sat down beside Naruto and Hikari. He had slightly tanned skin, and there was red paint running in a straight line from his eyes to the sides of his chin. On his forehead was an iron headband which had the kanji for toad, confirmed PLZ, inscribed on it. Finally, he wore a green vest on top of a mesh shirt. Got caught peeping again, Jiraiya-sama? Kakashi grinned. Yeah? Jiraiya sighed. I decide to come back in order to deliver some important information to Sarutobi-sensei, when this brat pulls a hinge and makes me stumble back into the girl's bath. He suddenly looked at Naruto in suspicion. Speaking of which, you look familiar? I must have one of those faces, Naruto laughed as he rubbed the back of his head. Oh look, it's that pervert. I thought Hikari disabled him when he jumped into the girl's bath. I guess not, just our luck that he turns out to be the Toad Sannin, Jiraiya. Huh, I guess so. Jiraiya laughed, and put a bill down to pay for his ramen. See you later Kakashi-san, Gaki. Later, Ero Sennin, Naruto and Hikari snickered, and Kakashi looked at them for a moment, before he took out an orange book. He's not an Ero Sennin, Kakashi grinned, he's the Ero Sennin. I don't know. Naruto frowned for a moment. I think Orochimaru was the Ero Sennin. He did go after men. Naruto and company began to laugh, and they dug into the food, quickly finishing it all. Kakashi turned to Hikari and Naruto, and began to grin. I hope you guys do well on the test tomorrow. I really wouldn't want to fail you. It's not as you should worry about, Hikari replied. Sasuke Temi is on a path of destruction, literally. He will stop at nothing to kill Itachi, and I doubt he'll even care if he dies along the way. Yes? Kakashi sighed. It would be easier if Itachi hadn't done all this. That's not necessarily true, though. Naruto sighed. I was told that the Uchiha clan hated the Kyuubi, right? Kakashi's eye widened. Where are you going with this? Interestingly enough, most of the attacks on me originated from people with the Sharingan. Kakashi lowered his head and thought. I suppose there is a silver lining to every cloud. That's not all, sensei. Hikari cut between the two of them. In fact, they were overly proud of their Sharingan, and even relied on it in battles. Truth be told, the Sharingan isn't even that great. What do you mean? Kakashi asked, wondering why Hikari would have such a strong stance on the Uchiha clan. The Sharingan lulled them into a sense of laziness, and allowed them to believe that they were the best. In reality, the Sharingan only allows memorization of the technique. It's pointless to memorize a technique if you haven't learned it. A small grin spread across Kakashi's face, and his eyelids tilted a little, indicating he was smiling. I see. That's an interesting opinion, Hikari-san. Thanks for the information. No problem, Kakashi-sensei, Hikari smiled. Anyways, you might as well get going. Don't you have to get lost on the road of life? Knowing grins spread on the faces of Naruto, Kakashi, and Hikari. I suppose I do. Kakashi laughed. Good luck on your test. If anything, at least make sure the two of you pass. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement while Hikari continued smiling. Kakashi waved to the two of them and jumped onto one of the rooftops, heading in the general direction of a memorial. Naruto and Hikari began walking towards their apartment, and Naruto spoke up, breaking the peaceful silence. We've changed a lot, haven't we? Hikari nodded. We have, but in what way? I suppose that's the problem, isn't it? Naruto sighed. It's not as if we can just examine ourselves. It's for the best, isn't it? If we know how much we've grown, we'll assume that we'll grow at the same rate. I suppose, but I don't see how that's a problem. Unless it lulls us into a false sense of security, causing us to subconsciously let up on training. Naruto grinned. To think that Konoha was willing to abandon him, Hitomi rolled her eyes. Sometimes, humans are such idiots. More or less, Hikari shrugged. So, do you want dibs, or can I? Naruto grinned. Knock yourself out. Or rather, knock him out. Naruto pointed towards a drunken man who had been following them. One look revealed that he was hiding a knife or some other weapon in his sleeve. Naruto winced as he watched the man do what most villagers always did. Demon lover. The man slurred as he moved from side to side. What if I am? Hikari asked, placing one hand upon her hip, close to her kunai pouch. I'm a finish what Taiyan. Started. He groaned and threw the knife at Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes as the knife missed him by 10 feet. Hikari threw a kunai at the man, grazing his wrist. He cried out in pain as blood came spurting out. When Hikari went to pick up her kunai, she was stopped by two Anbu. What happened here? One of them asked. This man attacked my friend and me, and so I retaliated, Hikari replied. The Anbu looked at the scene, before he noticed the knife on the floor. Alright, you're free to go. The other Anbu sighed, as he began to clean up the mess. Naruto and Hikari walked down the streets, until they reached a rundown apartment building. There was graffiti all over the walls, most words relating to demons. Many of the windows had been broken, and the glass was thus jagged. Naruto rolled his eyes as he noticed the newly broken windows. Last I checked, demons retaliated whenever their dens were attacked. Hikari rolled her eyes. They're obviously idiots. First, you get attacked by a giant fuzzy fox. Hey, I'm not fuzzy. Hitomi protested, trying to break one of the bars so she could run out. She says she's not fuzzy. Alright, they get attacked by a giant fox, and then it's sealed inside a kid. What's the point of harming the kid? Honestly, they even have the nerve to say they're doing it for the Yondaime. She narrowed her eyes in frustration. It's just not fair. Naruto gave a wry smile, and patted her on the back. I don't mind. After all, the way I see it, the best payback is indifference. I know, but still. She sighed, and looked at the building again. It's just unfair that they're punishing you for the sins of another. Well, that's just my fate. Naruto grinned. Hikari remained silent, and the two of them walked into the apartment. Compared to the outside, the inside was quite tidy. There were various belongings on the shelves, and there was a large seal adorning the entire floor. There were two beds, on opposite sides of the room, and they both had blue bed sheets. In the kitchen, there was a single, small refrigerator which contained cartons of milk and various vegetables. Upon further inspection, it was proved that the vegetables were actually hollow, containing kunai which could be used in an emergency. Naruto looked at the clock, and set the alarm for 7:15 a.m. Anyways, I'm turning in. Night, Hikari-chan. Good night, Naruto-kun. Hikari smiled, and she went to a lone desk in the corner. She took a small scroll out of the bottom, and began to write on it, and occasionally correct the writing. Naruto formed a seal and whispered, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Immediately, two clones of him formed. He gave those two clones orders and decided it was time to sleep. The next morning, Naruto woke up with a headache, and he groaned. After a minute of laying on the bed, he finally managed to pull himself up and get ready. Naruto ate a light breakfast, consisting of milk, as well as a little cereal which Hikari had bought. Finally, he looked at the clock, noticing it was 7:45. Naruto grinned as he jumped out the window, holding a piece of toast in his mouth. Naruto jumped across the rooftops, and quickly reached the training grounds. Naruto noticed Sasuke lifelessly sitting on the tree trunk, and Hikari polishing a crimson kunai. Naruto walked towards Hikari, and sat down beside her. "So, it's still red? I guess blood stains pretty well." Hikari replied absent-mindedly. While she was polishing the kunai, she continued to stare at it, her eyes drawn into the various textures and shapes. Naruto just looked up at the clouds, and waited for Kakashi to arrive. Finally, at exactly 8 o'clock, Kakashi appeared in a puff of smoke. "Sorry about that," Kakashi rubbed his head. "I got lost on the road of life." Naruto grinned. "I know what you mean. It's really annoying to get lost there." "Don't forget annoying," Hikari added, finally breaking out of her trance. She quickly pocketed the kunai and stood up. "Well, I'm sure you guys want to know about this test. Simply put, I have 2 bells." Kakashi pointed to the bells on his person. "You need a bell to pass. If you fail, you'll get sent back to the academy, and you'll have to retry the academy." Naruto grinned. "This'll be fun." "Immensely." Hikari added a knowing grin prevalent on her face. "Alright, you have 2 hours." Kakashi yelled. At this point, Sasuke stood up, and tensed his leg muscles. "Starting now." Sasuke jumped into hiding, followed by Hikari. Naruto remained, staring at Kakashi. "I suppose I shouldn't be hiding, should I?" Naruto gave Kakashi a knowing grin. "Except, I don't think that'd be very much fun." Kakashi looked at Naruto for a moment, and he shifted his position. Naruto immediately brought a kunai out, and even Kakashi was surprised at his speed. Kakashi held up a hand in surrender, and he took out a yellow book. "Whoa, is that the collector's edition of Icha Icha?" Naruto grinned, and he began to read over Kakashi's shoulder. "Wow, Ero Sennin is a genius," Naruto said, after a couple pages. "Definitely," Kakashi replied. Kakashi continued to read the book, and when Naruto suddenly tried to grab a bell, Kakashi kicked him away. Naruto rolled his eyes, and he pushed off, making it to Kakashi's position in one leap. Kakashi brought his own kunai out, and blocked Naruto's attack, pushing him back at the same time. Naruto began to struggle, and at that point, 3 shuriken were sent flying towards Kakashi. Kakashi jumped out of the way, only to find that the shuriken were following him. He silently cursed, and twisted his body to dodge the shuriken. Naruto threw his kunai where Kakashi was going to land. The kunai was underneath Kakashi's boot, and so he kicked off of it. Kakashi suddenly noticed the explosive tag on the kunai, and he quickly performed a hand sign. "Well, that was fun." Naruto sighed. At that point, Kakashi rushed out of the bushes towards Naruto. His hands were clasped together, and a single finger was protruding. "1,000 years of death." Kakashi cried out, and he brought his fingers forward towards Naruto. "Kinky?" Naruto grinned, and right before Kakashi was about to hit Naruto, he escaped, leaving a smoke bomb in his place. Kakashi looked around for the 2 of them, and was surprised to find that he couldn't sense Hikari. In the trees, Hikari jumped towards Naruto, giving him a thumb-up gesture. She passed him one of the bells she'd gotten, and Naruto placed it in his pocket. "Time to have fun." Naruto grinned. Sasuke had watched the fight, and he was fuming. Why is that Dobi the one who was winning? He doesn't even have a clan. His eyes widened when he saw Kakashi plop down beside him. "Yo!" Kakashi waved at Sasuke, and he began to form seals. A second later, he yelled out, "Doden! Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu! Earth style! Groundhog technique decapitation!" Sasuke's eyes widened as he was pulled below ground, with only his head remaining above ground. "Damn you! Release me!" Kakashi looked at Sasuke for a moment. "Nope. What do you mean? You're my teacher!" Sasuke yelled, glaring at Kakashi. "I won't always be here. Besides, this is a test. I'm your enemy right now." Kakashi nodded, and he leapt into the trees. Sasuke scowled at Kakashi's departing figure. Naruto and Hikari stood back to back in a clearing, each holding a kunai in one hand. Kakashi looked at the 2 of them for a moment, analyzing their defense. There's vulnerability at Naruto's left, and Hikari's right. That's a little too convenient for me." Kakashi formed a seal, causing an identical clone to appear. Kakashi and the clone jumped out at the same time, and each attacked the vulnerabilities available. When Kakashi's kunai came in, Naruto grinned, as he and Hikari brought their hands up in tandem. Bakuhatsu Bunshin no Jutsu. Exploding clone no Jutsu. They yelled in tandem. Kakashi grimaced, as both of them exploded in a colorful display of red and blue. Kakashi winced as he flew back, and he seemed awestruck for a moment. These two aren't any mere genin. Kakashi was broken out of his thoughts by Naruto, who charged straight at Kakashi. Kakashi readied himself to block, but Naruto simply placed his hands on the ground and used them to catapult above Kakashi. Kakashi watched Naruto suspiciously. At the apex of his jump, Naruto threw a kunai towards Kakashi, which Kakashi blocked. Kakashi suddenly jumped to the side, dodging Hikari's attack. Interesting, Kakashi mumbled, a small smile forming on his face. You know, these two are pretty good. In fact, they make up for Sasuke. Sasuke? Hey, did you free Sasuke? Kakashi asked, and he winced as he saw Naruto and Hikari look at each other expectantly. I don't think so, Naruto answered. Before Kakashi could roll his eyes, Naruto threw a three-pronged kunai at Kakashi. Kakashi paused at the sight of the kunai, giving Naruto enough time to close in for an attack. Luckily, Kakashi snapped out of it quickly enough to dodge Naruto's attack, and land into a trap. Naruto looked at Kakashi for a moment, and offered him a hand up. Suddenly, Kakashi slashed Naruto with his kunai, and Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi barely managed to get out of the pit. That's hilarious, one of the onlookers commented. It's a shame, though. The so-called demon is the one who's actually fighting, while the Uchiha prodigy is over his head. Just goes to show you, doesn't it? Yeah, but that won't ease the council whatsoever. Wait, what's he doing? Back at the fight, Naruto and Hikari were both running towards Kakashi. Kakashi sighed. I hope you two can forgive me for this. Before they could reply, Kakashi formed hand seals nearly instantly, and yelled out, Megan. Narukumi no Jutsu. Demonic illusion. Death Mirage Jutsu. Hikari collapsed, in pain, while Naruto continued on. Naruto paused for a moment, but gritted his teeth and continued. Natsuko-chan, a dying boy said, his red eyes flashing amongst the darkness. Natsuko gritted her teeth and brought her hands together. Kai, Hikari shouted, causing the illusion to disappear. Kakashi looked at Hikari in concern. When Naruto managed to get a hit in. Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke, and Hikari collapsed on the ground. Hikari-chan, Naruto slowly walked towards her, and looked her straight in the eyes. Are you alright? She blinked, taking deep breaths. I'm fine, she finally replied. I just let my guard down. What did you see? Naruto slowly sat down beside her, hoping she wasn't going into shock. I saw the death of somebody close to me. Hikari replied, after a moment's pause. I see. Naruto grimaced. Do you want to stop? No. Hikari yelled, I'm fine. Well, isn't this touching? Sasuke sneered, as he walked towards the two of them. I guess the Dobi and his girlfriend can't take a little fight. Naruto snarled, are you sure you want to try that, Sasuke? Sasuke smirked, of course I am. It's not as if you could even touch me. Naruto grinned suddenly, and he seemed to disappear. Sasuke looked around frantically, his confidence going down the drain. He couldn't even see any footprints or disturbed grass. It was almost as if Naruto vanished. Suddenly, Sasuke got hit in the chest, causing him to fall back onto the ground. Sasuke then received 3 consecutive cuts, each of them on his cheek. Naruto became visible again, standing beside Hikari. You overestimate your own abilities, with no idea of the depth of my own. And look at you now, groveling in the dirt. Sasuke grimaced, that was a lucky shot, Dobi. If you say so, Temi. It's not as if I'll care when you get sent back to the academy, Naruto sneered. He then helped Hikari up, and the two of them jumped towards the clearing in which the exam had started. As soon as the two of them reached there, the bell rang, and Kakashi appeared. Well, looks like time's up. Kakashi grimaced, as he looked at the three of them. I guess, you fail. Naruto looked at Kakashi for a moment, and tilted his head. The objective was to get a bell, right? Yes? Kakashi replied, a small smile forming on his face. Naruto held out a bell towards Kakashi, here you go. Kakashi looked expectantly at Hikari, who searched her pockets for the bell. Her eyes suddenly widened when she couldn't find it. Naruto looked at Hikari for a moment, and came to a decision. Here you go, Hikari-chan. Naruto grinned, and handed his belt to her. I can't accept this. Hikari frowned, and she pushed the bell back towards Naruto. I insist, Naruto replied, as he placed the bell in her hands. Well? Kakashi looked at Naruto and Hikari for a moment. Suddenly, Sasuke appeared in the clearing, his breathing coming in short gasps. I have a bell, he proclaimed. Sasuke pulled a bell out of his pocket and handed it towards Kakashi. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You stole Hikari-chan's bell? I didn't steal anything, Sasuke snorted. Besides, it's not as if you two were good enough to get a bell. Kakashi looked at the three of them for a moment and sighed. In light of recent developments, Sasuke perked up at his name. You fail. Sasuke was about to protest when Kakashi continued. Naruto and Hikari, you pass. Kakashi gave them an eye smile, which they returned, with their lips and eyes. You've got to be kidding me. Sasuke scoffed. The objective was to get a bell, wasn't it? Actually, that was only one of the objectives. It was simply there to test your skills. Naruto and Hikari passed that portion of the exam, as did you. Kakashi pinched the bridge of his nose through his mask. The second part required teamwork, which Naruto and Hikari showed. You on the other hand, backstabbed your team, and you stole the bell from one of your teammates. In reality, I was prepared to pass all three of you until you showed up with the stolen bell. Sasuke let out a frustrated growl as he charged Kakashi. Kakashi easily disarmed Sasuke, and placed his arm behind his back very painfully. Look, Sasuke, you might get special treatment from the council because of your heritage, but there are no shortcuts in life. Kakashi applied pressure to Sasuke's arm. You should learn that lesson well. It was one that your brother was very well acquainted with. Sasuke growled at the mere mention of his brother, and tried to attack Kakashi again, to no avail. Suddenly, two figures appeared in front of Kakashi, and they looked at the situation. Would you like us to present your testimony to the Hokage, Kakashi-senpai? If you could, Kakashi replied. Could one of you take the Uchiha back? I don't want him losing a fight to one of his former teammates, as I know they won't be very merciful. Of course, one of the figures bowed and took Sasuke with him. Alright you two, I'll expect to see you at that bridge tomorrow. Kakashi pointed towards a bridge which was shrouded in mist. Naruto and Hikari nodded. Kakashi went to the Hokage tower with the Anbu in pursuit. Finally, once he'd reached the tower, the Hokage called for his report. Team 7 has partially passed, Hokage-sama. So he held them back, then? Sarutobi sighed as he took a whiff of his pipe. Very well, I'll talk it over with the council and see if they allow a two-man team. Maybe they'll use that as an excuse to give Naruto and his friends suicidal missions. Kakashi grimaced at that. He was no stranger to suicidal missions, nor were any of his friends. Of course, Hokage-sama. Yamato, could you please give the council your testimony? Yes, I will, Kakashi-senpai. Yamato bowed, and followed the Hokage out of the room. So he held them back, then? Sarutobi sighed as he took a whiff of his pipe. Very well, I'll talk it over with the council and see if they allow a two-man team. Maybe they'll use that as an excuse to give Naruto and his friends suicidal missions. Kakashi grimaced at that. He was no stranger to suicidal missions, nor were any of his friends. Of course, Hokage-sama. Yamato, could you please give the council your testimony? Yes, I will, Kakashi-senpai. Yamato bowed, and followed the Hokage out of the room. Kakashi sighed as he followed the two of them to the location of the nearest council meeting. It was a well-known fact that Kakashi and councilors did not mix. After what seemed like an eternity, the trio stopped outside a large pair of double doors, and Sarutobi threw the doors open. The councilors immediately stopped their bickering, and waited to hear the results. Uchiha Sasuke has failed the Genin test, Sarutobi proclaimed, causing the council to heavily protest. Don't you mean Team 7 has failed? Aburame Shibi asked, as he looked straight at Sarutobi through his dark lenses. That's where I come in, Kakashi faked an eye smile. Uzumaki Naruto and Uzumaki Hikari were easily able to grasp the true meaning of the test, and they even managed to get 2 bells. Uchiha Sasuke on the other hand, was easily incapacitated, and he stole a bell from one of his teammates. The objective of this test was to get the bells, right? Danzo asked. likely planning something. That was an objective, but it was not the true objective. The true objective of this test was teamwork. Something which Naruto and Hikari showed time and time again. The two of them nearly managed to put me in the hospital for a couple of days. If the objective was to get the bells, then why don't you make Sasuke a genin? It matters not how they get the bells, am I correct? Danzo asked, ignoring the second part of Kakashi's sentence. No, you're not, Kakashi replied. I'm afraid that Sasuke will not be on my team. Thus, I would like to request that I am allowed to lead a two-man team, comprised of Uzumaki Naruto and Uzumaki Hikari. The council began yelling in protest again, until Danzo slammed his cane on the ground. We will grant your request, but on one condition. The next day, Naruto and Hikari were making their way to the bridge. The two of them stopped in awe when they saw that Kakashi was waiting for them. Naruto blinked in disbelief and brought his hands together, Kai. Kakashi remained standing on the bridge, and after a moment's pause, the two of them walked up to him. Alright, it turns out that the council allowed you two to pass and be on my team. Why do I sense a but? Naruto asked suspiciously. The condition is that you two have to complete a C-rank mission, on your own. Kakashi frowned despite the mask. You two can reject this condition if you want. The two of them stood their ground, and the only noise available was the wind. No, Naruto stated with conviction in his eyes. We won't back down, Hikari finished. I swore that I would never give up, and I will honor my word. Just as I will honor mine, Naruto nodded. Kakashi looked sad for a moment, but then he began to cheer up. You're just like my old teammates, he sighed. Alright, follow me. At the very least, I'll take you to the Hokage for the mission briefing. Naruto and Hikari obediently followed Kakashi, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Hikari was thinking about the council, wondering why they would let Sasuke stay as an academy student. Naruto was also thinking about Sasuke, but instead, he was recalling why Sasuke was hated by the two of them. Flashback, well, if it isn't the Dobi, Sasuke mocked the two of them. Naruto turned to stare at Sasuke. What do you want, Temi? Naruto grinned. Wasn't kicking your ass enough for you? That was a lucky shot, Dobi. If it wasn't for your girlfriend, you wouldn't even have your eyes at the moment, Sasuke scowled. I rely on my own power, Sasuke. What little there is, Sasuke made a fake sigh. It's not as if somebody like you could beat Uchiha. We're the best of the best. Really, Sasuke? Naruto laughed. All you do is boast. Let me guess, next you're going to tell me that you killed Itachi, who managed to kill the best of the best. Sasuke gritted his teeth. I wouldn't tell you anything, Dobi. Just remember that I'm better than you. Sasuke walked away, and Hikari came out from behind a tree. He hides behind his clan name. She clenched her fist. I hate people like him. People who think they're better than others just because of their birth. Just because. End flashback. The Hokage will see you now, Sarutobi's secretary said, giving Naruto a small smile. Naruto grinned back, and the three of them entered the room. Sarutobi looked at Naruto for a moment and sighed. Alright, your mission is to retrieve an important scroll from the inside of a bandit's camp. The rest is up to you. Oji-san, is there a problem? Naruto asked, somewhat wary of the mission. While you're out of the village, don't trust anyone, he replied, skillfully evading the question. As far as we know, the council will use this as an opportunity to have you killed. Naruto grinned, neither of us will die. After all, I have too much work to die. Sarutobi laughed, my sentiments exactly. I hope to see you soon, Naruto. You too, Hikari-san. Sarutobi handed the two of them a scroll with the mission details on it, and they went to the gate. See you later, Oji-san. Naruto waved as he went out of the door. Hikari bowed, and the two of them began their trip to the gate. Luckily, both of them already had all the supplies they'd needed, and it seemed as if it would only be a 2-day mission. When the two of them reached the gate, they handed their scroll to the man at the booth. AC rank? He scrutinized the scroll for a moment. Alright, good luck, you two. The two of them nodded as they took the scroll back, and they followed the path straight outside the gate. Naruto looked around in awe. He'd never actually left Konoha until today. The trees were so much larger than they'd seemed while inside the village. His musings were interrupted when he noticed a small patch of mud, among a road without dirt. Hikari seemed to notice the mud as well, and she shifted her position slightly so that she could grab any weapons if needed. This caution was proved useful when 3 shinobi exploded out of the mud. "Well, it looks like you two are in for some bad luck." The first one grinned as he shifted his turquoise uniform. "I hope you don't hold it against us." The second one laughed. "The Earth Brothers." The third one yelled out, and all 3 of them shifted into a pose. Naruto and Hikari sweat dropped, staring at the 3 shinobi. "You know what?" Naruto brought his left hand up to form a seal. The eyes of the 3 brothers bugged out, as Naruto yelled, "Bitch slap no jutsu." Immediately, 3 Naruto clones appeared out of nowhere and bitch slapped the 3 brothers together, simultaneously placing 3 seals upon them. Naruto and Hikari jumped out of the way when all 3 clones brought their hands up to form a seal. Bakuhatsu no jutsu. The clones disappeared in a puff of smoke as the brothers exploded, causing some of the trees to topple over and hit them. Hikari stared in disbelief, and she began laughing hysterically. "You beat them with 1 jutsu." 3 actually. Naruto pouted. "When did bitch slapping become a jutsu?" Hikari asked. "Around the same time that it became commonplace to shove a hand sign up your opponent's ass." Naruto muttered in loathing. Hikari giggled. "You have to admit that it was funny when Kakashi hit the smoke bomb and his fingers turned black." "I'll concede that," Naruto laughed. "It was lucky that you threw it in the air when I was looking for something to replace me." "Luck had nothing to do with it." Hikari rolled her eyes as they continued down the path. Naruto sighed when he saw a large tree which had no branches. He threw a reinforced kunai, of his own design, at the tree, causing it to split in half. When the tree split in half, it revealed an Anbu who had been tailing them for a while. I have some information from the Hokage." The Anbu rubbed his head in embarrassment. Hikari stared at the Anbu's mask, before she threw a kunai which he quickly dodged. "Well, I guess we'll have to do this the hard way." He quickly brought his hands up and yelled, "Shirigakure no jutsu." Art of hiding in the dust. I made this myself laughing face. Suddenly, great amounts of dust appeared in the air, and Naruto grimaced as some of it managed to make it to his eyes. Hikari was luckier, as she'd sensed the incoming jutsu, and had quickly closed her eyes. "Sorry that I had to do this, kiddo. I was ordered to get rid of you." "Nothing personal." The Anbu laughed as he struck Naruto in his head with a kunai. Naruto collapsed on the ground, coughing. Finally, the shinobi prepared to deal the killing blow, when Hikari snuck behind him and plunged her kunai through his neck. The results were instantaneous as he collapsed to the ground, bleeding. Immediately, the dust settled, allowing them to see the man's corpse, which had vanished. "That's weird," Hikari commented while Naruto tried to remove all the dust from his throat. "I think he used a replacement, or maybe he was a clone," Naruto pointed out after he'd finally cleared his throat. Hikari shrugged in response, and the 2 of them continued down the path of ambush. After nearly an eternity of traveling, they reached their goal, the bandit camp. Naruto and Hikari observed it from a hill, noting the guard arrangement and various other important pieces of information. Finally, when it seemed that all the bandits had gone to sleep, Naruto and Hikari began to discuss their plan. "It looks like it's wide open now, but we still don't know the location of that scroll," she muttered as she stared at the 2 guards, sitting around a campfire. "We don't have enough time for reconnaissance. They had to give us a time limit." Naruto cursed. "So, are you ready to charge in then?" Hikari asked with a small grin on her face. "Ready when you are. Let's go," Hikari commanded. The 2 of them immediately ran towards the center of the camp, and quickly slit the throats of the 2 guards. Naruto then formed multiple cage bunshin in order to search the camp. In a matter of minutes, Naruto found the location of the scroll, and he beckoned for Hikari to follow him. They quietly snuck to a large tent and they slowly entered. As soon as the 2 of them were inside the tent, a kunai went flying in their direction. Hikari managed to duck, but Naruto wasn't as lucky, and he had a kunai stuck in his shoulder. "Naruto-kun," Hikari hissed as soon as she saw the kunai. "I'm fine," Naruto waved his hand dismissively. He tore the kunai out from his shoulder, causing blood to drip to the floor. He threw the kunai towards his attacker, causing some of his blood to drop on the man. The man quickly dodged and appraised Naruto. "Interesting," he grinned, "I think you'll do fine." Immediately, he rushed towards Naruto, only to be blocked by Hikari. Naruto created 3 shadow clones, which Hikari replaced herself with. The shadow clones immediately, consecutively, punched the man in the gut, causing him to fly through the tent. Naruto looked at the scroll and frowned. It's a fake, so it was a trap, Hikari sighed. The council is really beginning to irk me. Well, we might as well bring back the head of this man, Naruto grinned. He took out a large kunai and slowly walked towards the man, who was currently lying on the floor. I hope you don't mind, Naruto commented. Before either of them could move, the man burst into black flames, and all of his remains disappeared. Get out of there, Hitomi yelled. Naruto's eyes widened and he immediately grabbed Hikari's hand and jumped. As soon as their feet left the ground, the camp burst into flames and exploded. Luckily, Naruto had predicted this, and so his sandals were perfectly positioned to use the flames to propel them further. Naruto landed with a wince, but absorbed the brunt of the impact so that Hikari could land without breaking an ankle. As soon as the two of them landed, they were assaulted by a barrage of shuriken and kunai. Naruto stared at the kunai as they went through him. Bunshin no Jutsu wins. Naruto grinned. As the shinobi were trying to figure out where Naruto was, they were quickly taken care of by Naruto's clones. That was a disappointment, Hikari sighed. Naruto nodded in assent. That's true, but he held up a scroll. Look what I found. Looks like we can go back, Hikari giggled slightly. I can't believe they thought that Chunin-level shinobi disguised as Junin and Anbu would be able to take us. It's their fault for underestimating us, Naruto replied. Hikari nodded and the two of them began to walk towards Konoha. After a surprisingly short walk, they were greeted by the looming gates of Konoha, illuminated by the setting sun. Beautiful, Hikari whispered, staring at the scene. The gates were shadowed perfectly by the sun, and the sky seemed to be melting into molten gold. She slowly turned towards Naruto and blushed slightly. She quickly turned her head to face the gate, as Naruto turned his head to face hers. His breath hitched in his chest, and he forced himself to exhale. Well, we should go in, Naruto said, trying to contain his raging blush. Why yeah, Hikari replied. The two of them walked through the gate just as it was closing, and they showed their mission information to the Chunin who was on gate duty. He nodded, and they went to the Hokage's office to report their mission as successful. Well, I'm surprised at the amount of interference you two received. Sarutobi frowned. It's almost as if somebody was trying to make an attempt on your lives. I wonder who'd want us dead. Naruto pretended to frown for a moment. Anyways, if that's all, I'd like to go train. Of course, Sarutobi gave Naruto a knowing smile. Enjoy your training. Naruto walked out of the room, where Hikari was waiting, seemingly in deep thought. Hikari-chan? Naruto prodded, it's not like you to be spaced out. Oh, I'm fine. She gave Naruto a reassuring grin, which he wholeheartedly returned. The two of them walked to Training Ground 44, otherwise known as the Forest of Death. How's my defense against the Sharingan coming along? Naruto asked, considering he didn't have the Sharingan. It's doing well, but you're using too little chakra, Hikari replied. She sent some of her chakra to her eyes, causing the iris to become red, and the pupil to shift into a spiral. After a moment, the pupil changed into 3 comma-like objects. Naruto began to concentrate, and as Hikari watched, his chakra began to move through his body, and it was slowly released through various points in his body until his body took on a blue tinge. As more and more chakra was being released, the two of them suddenly stopped, as Hikari's eyes reverted back to their usual onyx, hidden by the blue contact lenses she was wearing. What is it? Naruto asked the air. Well, I felt your chakra levels begin to rise, and I thought something was wrong, Kakashi replied as he walked out from behind a tree. I'm fine actually. I'm just working on a defense against the Sharingan so that my techniques can't be copied, Naruto explained. By constantly releasing chakra, it should cause your body to gain an unearthly glow in the Sharingan's view, making it harder for your seals to be seen. So I'm guessing that you'd be releasing even more chakra than recommended just so that you look like a bright flash? Kakashi deduced. Yeah, but I'm not quite there yet, Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Well, good luck with that. See you Naruto, Hikari-san. Kakashi waved and then jumped off into the distance. Hikari sighed and her eyes regained the Sharingan, as Naruto attempted to release his chakra again. The rate at which it was released quickly began to speed up, until it was visible to the naked eye. Hikari looked in awe as his chakra formed a spiral around his body. Naruto-kun, Hikari spoke up. Naruto stopped releasing his chakra, and looked up at Hitomi. She could easily see the physical and mental strain he was experiencing, simply from having to control that much chakra. Yeah, I think that could probably double as a shield, Hikari said. Naruto's eyebrows raised. A shield? That sounds pretty convenient. Yeah, but as far as I can see, it would be a huge problem since you're actually releasing your chakra with no goal in mind. You should probably control it and make it fit around your body so that there's no excess used. Naruto seemed to be in deep thought for a moment. Hey Hitomi-chan, could you give me some chakra? Naruto mentally asked Hitomi. She gave an assenting grumble, and Naruto felt her chakra refill his reserves. I think we should do that later, though. I've got to jog around Konoha 30 times, Naruto sighed. Sounds like fun, Hikari commented. Naruto pouted as she broke out into a grin. I'll join you. I think I need the stamina. You have even more stamina than I do. Naruto whined. No, I simply use more of my stamina than you, Hikari retorted. Naruto had no comeback for that, and so the two of them began to jog in silence. At the third lap, Naruto began to sweat. By the fifth lap, Naruto's breathing became somewhat labored. On the 10th lap, Naruto started to feel faint. Finally, he was at the 30th lap, when he saw two men catch up to him and Hikari. The two of them seemed to be exact clones, except one of them was smaller. Yosh, Guy-sensei. If I don't do 30 laps around Konoha, I'll carry a boulder from here to Suna 3 times. The smaller one proclaimed. Yosh, Lee, let us run. The taller one, Guy, yelled. Naruto and Hikari tried their best to hold in their laughter. Suddenly, the two men disappeared in green blurs, and caught up to Hikari and Naruto. Lee, their flames of youth burn brightly. Guy commented. Yosh, you will be my eternal rival. Lee proclaimed while pointing at Hikari. Naruto stared in morbid fascination, as the two men began to hug. Guy-sensei. Lee. Tears began streaming down their faces. Guy-sensei. Lee. They finally embraced, and a sunset miraculously appeared, while a wave came out of nowhere and crashed, just feet away from the two of them. Naruto began to wince, while Hikari looked as if she were going to throw up. Kai, Naruto yelled. When nothing changed, he began to panic. Kai, 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 K-A-I. Kakashi suddenly joined the quartet, and met pace with them. It can't be expelled, he sighed. I've tried millions of times. Kakashi, my eternal rival. Guy called out, breaking away from the hug. Crap, see you later, Kakashi jumped off. He's so hip. I challenge you, eternal rival. If I don't win, I'll run around Konoha 500 times on my hands. Guy cried out as he leapt after Kakashi. Yosh, eternal rival. I challenge you, Lee called, as he stared at Hikari. Did you say something? Hikari asked, feigning deafness. Yosh, my eternal rival is so hip. Lee proclaimed, as he began ranting about challenges and penalties. Let's run, Naruto whispered to Hikari. As soon as he said that, the two of them ran as fast as their legs could take them. When Sarutobi looked down from his window and saw an orange flash, followed by a black flash, he was sure the two were going for ramen. Ironically, Naruto and Hikari lost Lee around Ichiraku's, and so they went in to eat. Hey Naruto, how's life on Sasuke's team? Choji asked, as Naruto sat beside him. I wouldn't know, Naruto grinned. He failed, Hikari explained to a confused Choji. I thought there had to be teams of 3? Shikamaru pointed out, as he adjusted his pineapple-shaped hair. They made an exception for us, Naruto shrugged. Could I have the usual? Coming right up, Tucci grinned as he began to get more ingredients. Everybody knew that when Naruto, Hikari and Choji were there at the same time, it took him nearly all his supplies to provide for them. Well, I envy you. Shikamaru sighed. Ino's too damn troublesome. Just do me a favor and don't tell her he failed, Naruto pleaded. She'll be on my case forever, saying, Sasuke-kun this and Sasuke-kun that. Isn't Sakura generally worse? Hikari asked. Well yes, but she does it either way, Naruto explained. What was that? Naruto turned around in fear when he saw Sakura. Oh crap, I'll see you guys later. He dashed out of the stall just as Tucci brought his ramen. Sakura prepared to go after him, when Naruto dashed back in to retrieve his ramen. He fondly stared at it for a minute and solemnly said, "No man left behind." Everybody's sweat dropped as Naruto ran out of the stall again, followed by Sakura. Soon, Ino joined the chase, and Hikari sighed. "I guess I had to help him," she muttered. "Troublesome, eh Shikamaru?" Indeed, Shikamaru grinned as Hikari joined the chase, and managed to dissuade Sakura and Ino from pummeling Naruto. "He insulted me," Sakura cried. "It's his fault that Sasuke-kun didn't pass." Ino cried out. "Sakura, he told the truth about you." "Ino, it's Sasuke's fault he failed." Was Naruto-kun taking the exam for Sasuke? Hikari glared at the two of them. "Well, no," Ino frowned. "Exactly," Hikari cried out in frustration. Naruto looked out from a corner, with some of the ramen still in his mouth. "I don't bully Naruto baka." Did she actually call him that? Sakura cried out. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Hikari asked. "I said, I don't bully Naruto ba." Sakura paused as she noticed Naruto's honorific. "Exactly," Hikari grinned triumphantly. Ino and Sakura walked away dejectedly, with their heads hung in shame, as Naruto sighed. "Thanks so much, Hikari-chan. Well, friends look out for each other." Hikari sighed. "I bet you enjoy being chased by girls," she suddenly grinned. "What? No." Naruto blushed. "Ah, you're blushing." A mischievous glint appeared in Hikari's eyes, and Naruto backed away. The chase resumed, except this time it was Hikari chasing Naruto. "Why me?" Naruto cried out. Meanwhile, Kakashi was reading his little orange book while walking through the ninja academy, when he saw Naruto in the distance. As Kakashi squinted, he could make out Naruto's shape getting bigger, and as Naruto was about to run past Kakashi, Iruka appeared and held an arm out, clotheslining Naruto. "No running in the halls," Iruka commanded. Naruto and Hikari sullenly slowed to a fast walk, each trying to catch up to the other. Finally, they reached the exit on the other side of the hall, and the chase continued at high speeds. Next, they managed to run into a television station, past the location where a cooking show was recording. While they were running past, the man was trying to put a glass bowl into the microwave. Naruto and Hikari pushed him out of their way, and his glass bowl fell. Naruto ran out of the door and hid behind a pillar. "Hey, look, it's a distraction," Naruto called, as he pointed towards the sky, where there was a trail of smoke from a plane. The trail seemed to say, "Oh God. It's a distraction." Hikari stared open-mouthed at it, when she noticed that Naruto was trying to sneak past her. She immediately began chasing him again, and they managed to end up in the cooking show studio again. The man was again trying to get a glass bowl into the microwave, when Naruto pushed him, causing the contents to be spilled on the man's head, and the bowl to break. The two of them continued their chase throughout the entire village, when they managed to end up at the cooking studio again. This time, the man was prepared for them, and he held up a hand. "Wait," he yelled in anger. Dumbfounded, Hikari and Naruto stopped their running for a moment, and he threw the bowl onto the ground, shattering it into pieces. "Fine, go." The chase resumed again, until Naruto bumped into a certain purple-haired kunoichi. She looked at Naruto for a moment, before a small grin appeared on her face. "Naruto, have you been avoiding Ne-san?" "Shit," Naruto muttered. "Of course not, Anko-ne." "I didn't think so," Anko grinned. "If I find out that you were." She brought out a kunai and slowly licked the edge of it. "We'll have to have a private session." Naruto's eyes widened in fear, and he ran away, with only one thought in his head. "Why me? Because you enjoy it?" Hitomi muttered. Naruto begrudgingly walked towards the bridge where he and Hikari were supposed to meet Kakashi. To his utter shock and disbelief, Kakashi was on time. Again. "Morning," Kakashi waved. "Is there any reason you're on time?" Naruto asked. "Well," Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. "It's a long story. Where's Hikari-san? Holy crap, he's on time," Hikari called out as she pointed towards Kakashi. Kakashi's visible eye twitched, and he audibly sighed. "Alright, anyways, as you know, the Chunin exams are coming up in 2 months. Kakashi explained. Naruto nodded, as Kakashi continued. "The problem is, you have to finish a certain amount of D ranks to be allowed to participate." "We haven't done any D ranks," Naruto sighed. "Yes, and I talked to the Hokage about this. If we do one more C rank mission in lieu of the D ranks, he'll allow us to participate." Sweet. Naruto cried out. What are we waiting for? There's an added risk, though. Since you're a two-man team, and we all seem to have bad luck. Kakashi rolled his eyes. The council may see fit to send an assassin after you, Naruto. Naruto shrugged. I don't mind. Are you sure? Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded in response, and Kakashi turned to Hikari. How about you? I'll go, Hikari replied. Maybe it'll actually be a real C rank this time. Kakashi sighed. Alright, let's go and pick up the information from the Hokage. The trio set off to the Hokage's tower, and once inside, they were forced to wait for a few minutes while the Hokage finished up with another team. As soon as the door opened, Naruto and Hikari furrowed their eyebrows, while Kakashi frowned underneath his mask. Sasuke was walking out of the room, wearing a Hite Ite. Well, Dobi, I'll see you at the Chunin exams, Sasuke sneered as he passed Naruto. Naruto simply stood in place, and as soon as Sasuke had passed, his lips turned upwards into a small smirk. The three of them entered the room, and Sarutobi smiled sympathetically at Naruto. So, you saw Sasuke then? Why is he a genin? Hikari asked angrily. The council found a loophole in our proceedings. Sarutobi sighed. It doesn't matter, Naruto shrugged. Overconfidence will only lead to death. That's the problem. We don't want to lose any more bloodlines, Sarutobi frowned. What's the mission about, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked, veering the conversation away from Sasuke. You will be escorting a man to the land of waves, Sarutobi explained. You can come in now. The three of them turned around as a man walked through the shoji, sliding paper door. He had a bottle of sake in one hand, and he was obviously inebriated, as shown by his flushed cheeks and the obvious bottle lifted to his mouth. You give me kids? I pay you good money, and you give me kids? He slurred. Hey Runt, are you really a ninja? Naruto's hand twitched towards his kunai case, and Kakashi sighed. It's all right, I'm with them. If anything goes wrong, I'll be able to pick up the pieces. I am the bridge building expert, Tazuna. Once I have returned to my country, I will have all of you protect my life with yours while I complete the bridge. He proclaimed, still staggering slightly. Naruto rolled his eyes, and tuned out until he found himself at the gate. Naruto blinked for a moment, until he noticed that Kakashi, Hikari and Tazuna were within 3 feet of him. We must be setting out. As the four of them began to walk, Naruto casually looked to the right. Do you sense that, Hitomi-chan? Seems like it's another A rank for you. Hitomi casually replied. Naruto sighed and continued onward when something occurred to him. Is there a hidden village in the land of waves? He asked. Kakashi shook his head. In most cases, hidden villages are a display of a country's power, and they're how neighboring countries keep up relations with each other. In the case of the land of waves, it's hard to be influenced by any outside countries. Therefore they have no need for hidden villages. Well, that's a disappointment, Naruto sighed. I'm sure we'll get to fight someday. Hikari reassuringly patted Naruto on the shoulder. Naruto sighed as they passed a small puddle. Almost immediately, he heard the sounds of splashing and an object flying through the air. Suddenly, a chain wrapped around Kakashi, and their assailants pulled. Kakashi was shredded to the point where there was nothing left, save for small scraps of fabric. Suddenly, the two of them appeared behind Naruto. One down, 2 to go. Naruto jumped as the chain went flying towards him, and he sent chakra to his hands. Predictably, the two of them threw their chains towards Naruto, who grabbed them in midair. The assailants pulled on their chain, to no avail, causing bloody scratches to appear on Naruto's hands. Naruto used all his strength to yank the chains upward, however the two of them removed the chains from their wrist guard. Immediately, they went to attack Hikari, who was protecting Tazuna. Naruto phased into existence in front of Hikari, and prepared to attack, when one of the assailants was clothes-lined by Kakashi. Taking advantage of their confusion, Naruto threw a kunai at the other one, and miraculously knocked him unconscious. Well Naruto, Hikari, good job, Kakashi held a thumb up, and took the other man in a headlock. Except, they have poison on their claws. We'll have to leech that out, Naruto. Naruto sighed. We could leave it in. I'd rather not. Kakashi rolled his eye. Alright, Hikari, could you pass me that kunai? Naruto asked. Hikari nodded and threw a double-edged kunai which was stained crimson. Kakashi watched in morbid fascination as Naruto threw the kunai up into the air, and clasped his hands together, causing the kunai to pass through both of his hands. Naruto's blood began to spurt out from his hands, and he slowly removed the kunai, before tossing it in the air. "Do you still want this?" Hikari shrugged. "Why not?" Naruto threw the kunai back towards her, and she caught it with ease. Naruto sent chakra to his hands, causing them to go into a suspended state while they healed. "Tazuna?" Kakashi turned away from Naruto. "We need to talk." Tazuna gulped as Kakashi threw the two disabled shinobi against a tree. "These two are Chunin from Kirigakure no Sato." Kakashi explained, "They are shinobi known to keep fighting no matter the cost." "How were you able to detect our movements?" one of them asked. "It's been weeks since it's last rained, and the sun is out." "Why would there be a puddle today?" Kakashi asked. "Then why did you let the kids fight?" Tazuna asked, somewhat suspicious of Kakashi. "If I were up to it, I could have killed the two in a matter of seconds," Kakashi replied. "But, I needed to know who they were targeting. Were they targeting you, or one of us? We haven't heard anything about you being targeted by shinobi. Your request was protection from armed robbers and bandits. This," he gestured towards the two shinobi, "is a mission that's B rank or greater." "Sensei, don't worry about it," Naruto cut in. "We knew that the chances of a misinformed mission was high. I'd rather not miss the Chunin exams," Hikari piped in. "It'd be nice to see the look on Temi's face when he loses to us." Kakashi laughed a little. "Alright then, could we at least know why you're being targeted?" Tazuna sighed in relief. "As I said, I'm building a bridge in the land of waves. I'm afraid that a certain man doesn't want this bridge to be built. A long time ago, Gato set his sights on the land of waves. At first, we all prospered. Yet in time, we found that his shipping business was actually a front for illegal activities. He isolated our country from the outside world, making it hard for any of us to make a decent living, and he began to overcharge us on food. This bridge will bring peace to the land of waves." Kakashi frowned. "You're talking about civil war? That's at least an A- class, maybe an S class." "Sweet." Naruto grinned. "Don't worry about it, sensei. We can take him." Logically, the next opponent would be a Junin. Kakashi muttered, completely ignoring Naruto. He looked Hikari in the eyes for a moment, and sighed. "Alright, let's continue." The quartet walked until they reached a small town along the sea, where Tazuna talked to one of the fishermen. "Alright, we can get a ride from him." All of them climbed on the boat which was handled by the fisherman, and they began to paddle through the mist. "This is pretty thick mist," Naruto commented. After a brief pause, Tazuna murmured, "We should be able to see the bridge soon. If we move along the side of the bridge, we should be at the land of waves soon," the fisherman said. As they continued to row, the bridge began to come into view. "That's huge," Naruto whispered in awe. Soon, the pier began to appear, and the quartet quietly left the boat. The fisherman nodded to all of them as he rowed back through the mist. "Alright, take me home safely," Tazuna commanded. Hi, Kakashi muttered, and they began to walk along the row of houses. Naruto suddenly moved his head to the right and threw a kunai into the bushes. Tazuna and Kakashi stared at him while he went to retrieve a snow rabbit. "Rabbit," Naruto cried in depression. "I'm so sorry." Suddenly, his eyes widened. "Wait, that's a snow rabbit. A white snow rabbit, which is why you should duck," Kakashi cried out, as a sword went flying over their heads. As it flew, it began to twirl at impossible speeds, and headed straight for Naruto. Naruto stared at the sword unblinkingly. Now, Naruto held his hand up and reinforced it with demonic chakra. Amazingly, Naruto managed to catch the sword, and Kakashi stared at him in awe. Was that chakra attraction? Kakashi stared, dumbfounded. "Well, yeah?" Naruto rubbed his head. "I'm not that good at it." "Boy," a pale-skinned man jumped out of the trees. "Give back my sword if you know what's good for you. You're just going to use it to kill us." Hikari deadpanned. "It doesn't matter. Give it back," he cried. "I'll make you rue the day you ever stole anything from Momochi Zabuza." Naruto looked at Zabuza for a moment. "Hey, Hikari-chan, catch." Naruto threw the sword over Zabuza's head to Hikari, who easily caught the sword. "Girl," Zabuza glared. "Kakashi, how much do you think this sword would be worth?" Hikari casually asked. "I don't know. It belongs to one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, so." Kakashi paused. "A hell of a lot." "Well, that solves that dilemma," Naruto shrugged. Hikari unfurled a sealing scroll, and just as Zabuza flew towards her, she threw the sword to Naruto, who sealed it within a scroll. "Well, you can say goodbye to that sword." Zabuza growled loudly. "I was going to spare you if you handed that man over. Now you'll just have to face the wrath of the demon of the mist." Naruto stared at Zabuza and burst out laughing. "You're not a demon. And you would be?" Zabuza cracked his knuckles. "As a matter of fact." Naruto grinned, revealing impossibly long canines. "I'd like to think of myself as one." Zabuza stared at Naruto for a moment, before his gaze slowly drifted to Kakashi. "If it isn't Sharingan Kakashi." "Zabuza." Kakashi inclined his head. "I think you might want to leave us be." "I'm afraid I can't do that." Zabuza grinned. "Your broth stole my sword. You threw it at us," Naruto countered. "You're guarding my target. You have no eyebrows," Naruto grinned. Zabuza narrowed his eyes, decided to move. He disappeared and reappeared right behind Kakashi, planning to plunge a kunai into his back. Kakashi jumped just as soon as Zabuza thrust his kunai forward, and he threw a shuriken towards Zabuza. Zabuza was hit by the shuriken, and he disappeared in an explosion of water, only to reappear and hit Kakashi. This time, Kakashi was the one who burst into water, and a kunai suddenly flew at Zabuza, who dodged it. Nearly instantly, it became a battle of attrition, aided by kunai, shuriken, and fists. Finally, Kakashi and Zabuza stayed in one place, both of them panting for breath. "It seems that we're using too much chakra," Kakashi pointed out. "I suppose so," Zabuza agreed. "Take up formation around Tazuna." Kakashi ordered Naruto and Hikari, who immediately complied. Not a second later, another duplicate of Zabuza rushed the two of them. Hikari began to fight said duplicate, while Naruto continued to guard Tazuna. Hikari sent a ferocious roundhouse kick to Zabuza's head, which he narrowly blocked by ducking. A second later, Hikari jumped back and threw a kunai towards him, which he easily deflected with his hand. During the brief moment in which Zabuza's eyes were occupied, Hitomi stabbed him in the gut with a kunai. Her eyes widened when Zabuza didn't dissipate or release any sort of liquid. Just as suddenly, Zabuza threw her back with a ferocious grin plastered on his face. She continuously attacked the clones, raining it with various projectiles. Suddenly, she noticed a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. She quickly moved her eyes to follow it, and she cursed. "Kai!" she called out as she clasped her hands together. Suddenly, the world shifted into focus, and she saw that she was fighting Naruto, not Zabuza. To her dismay, he seemed rather badly wounded as well. She tried to open her mouth, but no words came out. Hikari looked down in shock to see an icicle penetrating her throat. Naruto gave Hikari a sad smile, and pulled the icicle out, before thrusting it back in. "I just realized how dirty that sounds." The entire world shattered in an explosion of color, as Hikari gasped for breath. Various emotions were fueling her at the moment: betrayal, shock, heartbreak. Hikari blinked through the tears which were accumulating in her eyes, to find Zabuza poised to strike her down with a sword he'd pulled out of nowhere. Acting on pure instinct, she quickly kicked as hard as she could in a certain place, causing Zabuza to fall down and start screaming like a little girl, with no eyebrows. "So, you broke through that genjutsu," Zabuza managed to strain out, before turning into a puddle of water. She blinked in shock, finally realizing that there wasn't an icicle piercing her throat. She looked behind her to see Kakashi imprisoned within a floating orb of water, and Naruto diligently protecting Tazuna, all the while sending out various clones to fight Zabuza. Hikari, sensing an opening in Zabuza's stance, quickly threw a kunai at his opening, allowing Naruto to pass his defenses. Zabuza cursed as Kakashi fell out of the water prison. "You got lucky," a sullen Zabuza proclaimed, as he disappeared. All three of them, sans Kakashi, looked around in shock, when Zabuza suddenly reappeared behind Hikari. He brought his sword up in a perfect arc, and Naruto cursed his inability to save her. Zabuza's sword began its descent towards Hikari, and time seemed to slow down for the three Konoha shinobi. Kakashi was desperately trying to run towards her, while Naruto was frozen in shock. Hikari watched as the sword got closer and closer to her neck. Suddenly, in an unexpected movement, Hikari took out a kunai faster than anybody could follow, and stabbed it straight into Zabuza's thigh, where his femoral artery was contained. Zabuza winced, but didn't stop his sword's momentum. Hikari quickly took the kunai out of his artery and stabbed it into his groin. The sword was an inch away from her neck at this point, and Hikari closed her eyes, willing herself to be out of his sword's reach. After a moment, Hikari opened her eyes in shock, to see that she'd managed to replace herself with one of Zabuza's own clones. Zabuza cursed as his clone transformed into water and fell to the ground. He was about to throw the sword at Hikari when he noticed his injuries. "Bitch!" Zabuza screamed, as he fell to the ground, clutching at his groin in an attempt to alleviate the pain. "I imagine that's impossible." Before he could move anymore, Zabuza was struck by two senbon and his body immediately went limp. Naruto, Hikari and Kakashi looked at the new arrival in interest. It was a shinobi with a mask which had 3 blue, swirling lines on the forehead of it, and a red crescent near the cheek. The shinobi's black hair was long, easily shoulder-length. "Thank you for your assistance," the shinobi bowed, as she grabbed Zabuza and disappeared with him. Naruto blinked and turned to Kakashi. "What was that?" "A hunter nin," Kakashi explained. "They hunt down rogue shinobi and ensure that the secrets of those shinobi don't fall into enemy hands." "Huh, should we take this old man home?" Naruto asked, gesturing towards Tazuna. Kakashi shrugged. "That's our job," he muttered as he blinked furiously. "Are you alright, Kakashi-sensei?" Naruto asked. "I'm just low on chakra." He rubbed his temple. "How about you, Hikari?" Naruto asked. She was even paler than usual, and her hands were shaking a little. Hikari seemed to be in deep thought. "Hikari? I'm fine," she quietly replied. Naruto frowned, knowing that this wasn't exactly the case. Naruto created 3 shadow clones to carry Kakashi, who was teetering all over the place, and slung Hikari over his shoulder. "Hey," she protested. "You don't seem fine," Naruto nonchalantly stated. Hikari glared at him while he walked to Tazuna's house, as if carrying her on his shoulder was no problem. After a while of walking, a small blush began to appear on Hikari's face. She couldn't help herself, it was just so comfortable. Unknown to Hikari, Naruto also had a blush on his face. To him, Hikari felt like she fit against his body perfectly. He suppressed a shudder as he continued onwards, following Tazuna to the house. Quite soon, they stopped in front of a small red house. Tazuna took out a key and led Naruto, and his clones, and Hikari, and Kakashi, inside, showing him to a room. "I hope you don't mind sharing a room with the girl? We only have 1 spare room and the rest are full. Your sensei could probably fit in my room," Tazuna explained, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Naruto shook his head. "I'm fine with it as long as she is." Tazuna nodded and left the room to await his daughter and grandson. "I don't mind," Hikari mumbled into Naruto's shoulder. Naruto gently placed her on the ground and she tried to regain her balance. She threw a glare at Naruto, who flinched. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, uncertainly. "Nope," she replied. Naruto frowned when he suddenly remembered something. "What did you see in that genjutsu that Zabuza cast on you?" This time, it was Hikari's turn to flinch. She regained her composure and coolly replied, "Nothing." "It's not nothing," Naruto argued angrily. "We've never hidden anything from each other, Hikari-chan. Why start now? What difference does it make?" Hikari yelled. "It's not as if he made you kill me." As soon as Hikari finished her sentence, her eyes widened. Naruto was at a loss for words. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. "It's alright. I know you wouldn't do that," Hikari replied quietly. "Still, I'm sorry you had to see that," Naruto said. "I've lost so much over the course of my life. I don't want to lose you." As soon as the words left his mouth, Naruto blinked in confusion. Hikari began to blush, and she finally noticed her clothes. "I have to change," she said. Naruto nodded as he left the room. "If anybody asks, I've gone for a walk," Naruto told Tazuna before he left. Indeed, Naruto did go for a walk, stopping at the side of a tree. After an internal monologue, "A fox needs her sleep shrug asterisk." Naruto punched the tree in frustration. After the punch, he felt even worse, most likely due to the bleeding knuckle was sporting. The tree seemed no worse for the wear, save for a small dent where Naruto's fist impacted. "I'll get him," Naruto muttered. "Even if he's dead, I'll make him regret casting that genjutsu on Hikari-chan." "He's stronger than you," Hitomi pointed out with a small yawn. "I'll just have to get stronger," Naruto replied. It's not that easy. Strength without discipline is useless. Then I'll get discipline. Naruto paused for a minute. You can hurt me, stab me, break me. But the day you touch Hikari-chan. Ah, what about me? Hitomi pouted. You're a near omnipotent fox, Naruto pointed out. Sealed in me, he added as an afterthought. Ah, life is a lazy fox. Hitomi sighed contentedly. Seriously, though, you have no chance against Zabuza as you are. What can I do about it? Naruto asked exasperatedly. Hello? Hikari poked Naruto in the forehead. Naruto blinked in surprise and was about to reach for a kunai when he recognized Hikari. I was just thinking, Naruto smiled. It's not every day you get to aid in a political war. He slumped against the tree and sighed. I felt so helpless when I was fighting them. He admitted sadly. Sure, I was able to take out a clone, but it's only 1/10 of the original. Hikari frowned. Is that all? Yes? Then train. Hikari commanded. If you have enough time to be depressed, train. If you have enough time to consider alternate scenarios, train. It's pointless to give up when you can just as easily improve yourself. Naruto stared at her for a moment, before breaking out into a grin. Alright, let's start training. Hikari backed away suddenly. No, weren't we talking about you? If you have enough time to be depressed, train. Naruto replied. I don't know about you, but I want to get stronger. Not just for myself, but for those I love. After all, I am going to be the future Hokage. Naruto proclaimed, as he performed Guy's patented, nice guy, pose. Hikari stared at him. Naruto? Suddenly, her entire demeanor changed. Let's train. The rest of the afternoon was passed by the two sparring. Hikari easily beat Naruto, but the sheer speed at which he could think on his feet amazed her. Finally, the two of them prepared for the final attack, something which often occurred in real fights. Naruto and Hikari ran towards each other and prepared their most powerful jutsu. Kakashi watched from the window, and he proudly smiled. I wouldn't mind teaching somebody who surpasses my sensei, he murmured to nobody in particular. Tazuna, who had been watching along with Kakashi, simply nodded in awe. They're quite something, aren't they? Tazuna asked. Yeah, the two of them have gone through countless hardships. Most people would have given up by now. Instead, they draw strength from their troubles. It's actually. Kakashi searched for a word in vain. Well, it's amazing. Let's leave it at that. Tazuna laughed for a moment. Indeed, I hope those two don't lose sight of their path. If they do, it could spell certain disaster for the world, Kakashi laughed. Without a doubt, those two will be the greatest shinobi history has ever seen. Tazuna nodded, as a little boy was watching beside him. Let's go, Inari. It's past your bedtime. Inari stood on his tiptoes, trying to watch through the window. Oh, Kay? He replied, after staring in awe. As they walked towards Inari's room, Tazuna smiled. Those two have been able to easily do something Tsunami and I couldn't. At this rate, Inari will break out of his shell. Naruto landed back and began to gasp for breath. That was intense, he finally said. It was, Hikari agreed. She was nearly as winded as Naruto, but in slightly better shape. Well, I think they're waiting for us, Naruto said. He was about to finish when he collapsed from fatigue. Hikari giggled as she watched Naruto fall. This time, she threw him over her shoulder, and began to limp towards Tazuna's house. Naruto groaned as he slowly got out of the bed. Every time he moved, a sharp crack would resound through the air, and he'd collapse back into bed again. Just to restart the process all over again. Finally, after countless strained muscles, Naruto managed to get up again. Thanks for the healing, Naruto sarcastically told a sleeping Hitomi. Usagi-kun? Hitomi murmured. Naruto's sweat dropped and decided to break off the connection. Morning sunshine, Hikari cheerfully greeted Naruto. Naruto expressionlessly stared at her for a moment. Suddenly, Naruto broke out into a grin. Ready to train? He asked. Hikari nervously backed away. I could have sworn you'd be out for the next 2 days. Hikari murmured. Naruto grinned in response. I'm never out for half as long as you'd expect. It helps to have a near omnipotent demon in my navel, you know. I'll bet, Hikari muttered. You know that there's breakfast, right? Naruto's eyes widened. Breakfast? Seriously? Hikari shook her head sadly. Yes, there's breakfast. Now hurry up and eat, she commanded. Naruto stood to his full height and mock saluted her. After a moment of staring at each other, they both turned away simultaneously with small blushes. Naruto hurriedly ate his breakfast, while Hikari watched him sadly. You know, we should have left that village long ago. Hikari sighed. If they're willing to give Sasuke a second chance. She narrowed her eyes, adding extra malice to Sasuke's name. I'm going to stay in that village, Naruto replied after a long pause. It's not as if I'm alone. I have Shikamaru, Shino, Kiba and even Kakashi-sensei. What about me? Hikari pouted. It'd be kinda redundant to say your name. Naruto rubbed the back of his head. Hikari rolled her eyes and poked him in the forehead. Hurry up and finish. Naruto rubbed his forehead and sent a mock glare at her. After the two of them broke out laughing, he quickly swallowed the rest of his cereal whole. Naruto put his bowl down on the table and summoned a shadow clone to watch Kakashi. Imagine his surprise when he sees Kakashi at the area in which he and Hikari were about to train within. Kakashi-sensei, shouldn't you be in bed? Naruto asked. I'm on my way there. I just thought I should get you two started on your training, Kakashi smiled. First, he took out a small book. Let me tell you two a story. Naruto and Hikari looked at each other and shrugged. The two of them sat down as Kakashi opened a book and began reading. Over 15 years ago, I was ecstatic. Kakashi started. I just graduated from the academy, and I get to be a shinobi. I get to prove the worth of my clan, myself, and my power. Sounds familiar, huh? Anyways, I was assigned a sensei. Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage. Flashback. Minato sighed as he looked at the three of them. Alright, follow me. Team 9, soon to be dubbed Team Minato, walked out to one of the training fields. The three of them were a peculiar bunch. A girl with dull brown hair and pink markings on her face. A boy with black hair and a carefree expression, and another boy with soulless eyes and a mask covering the bottom half of his face. Minato suddenly stopped and threw a kunai at them. They immediately scattered. You have to get this bell from me. Minato pointed towards a bell tied to his waist. If you don't get it, you will die. Kakashi stared at Minato with a shocked expression, before it became immensely determined. The black-haired boy beside him looked to be unsure of what to do, while the girl was also trying to decide whether to run or attack. Minato sighed when he saw them do nothing. Fine, have it your way. He immediately threw 3 kunai towards them at breakneck speed and barely missed them. As Kakashi saw the kunai pass him, he snapped back to attention. Kakashi ran towards Minato with his kunai drawn. As Kakashi was about to attack Minato's torso, he jumped and tossed the kunai behind him. Minato easily deflected the kunai with one of his own, and he turned back to the other two as Kakashi jumped out of sight. He's made his decision, how about you? The girl, inspired by the bravery which Kakashi had showed, threw 2 kunai and 4 shuriken towards Minato, and disappeared into the trees. As the projectiles neared Minato, they began to glow and they exploded. As the dust blew away, Minato was unharmed, and the lone boy was still standing in the same place. And you? Minato turned his gaze towards the boy. He stared at Minato again, disbelieving. Then his eyes narrowed. I won't give up, he muttered. The boy took out a kunai, but instead of attacking Kakashi with it, he held it in his hand. I won't give up, no matter how bad the situation seems. That's my nindo. The nindo of Uchiha Obito. Minato smirked for a moment. Those are some nice words. He brought out a shuriken and kunai. But, how will you back them up? Obito grinned. I'll back them up the same way you back yours up, sensei. I'll fight, till the end. With that said, he waited for Minato to make the first move. He shifted his grip on the kunai, struggling with his sweaty palms. Minato grinned as he disappeared in a yellow flash. Suddenly, Obito noticed that Minato had appeared behind him, and was holding a kunai to his neck. If that's how it is. Minato began to move the kunai against Obito's skin and Obito frowned in realization. Before anything else could happen, Kakashi and the girl flew out of a bush and attacked Minato furiously, forcing him to release Obito. Rin, now. Kakashi commanded. Rin nodded, and she threw several more kunai towards Minato, who blocked them with ease. His eyes widened when he noticed the explosive seals inscribed on them, and he had to force nearly all his chakra to his feet just to get away. Kakashi and Obito launched their own attacks at Minato, which were all easily deflected. Suddenly, they all found themselves surrounded by clones of Minato. The three of them glared unwaveringly towards the clones and took up a stance, each of them covering the back of the other. The Minato duplicates grinned and flew towards the genin at unmatched speeds. As the three prepared themselves to fight, the clones all disappeared in a puff of smoke. "You pass," Minato laughed. 2 years later, "Well, if it isn't the son of the White Fang." One of the shinobi grinned. "Boys, it looks like we'll have some good hostages." The partnering shinobi all grinned as they rushed Kakashi and Obito. The two of them wore sad smiles on their face as they stared at the face of death. In the blink of an eye, the Iwa shinobi jumped towards them and began to throw kunai. Kakashi heard Obito's cry of pain, and he completely disregarded his opponents as he turned to face Obito. That very mistake cost him one of his eyes as a shinobi managed to slash into an eyelid, causing blood to pour everywhere as viscous liquid began to fall out of Kakashi's eye. Kakashi screamed in pain and threw a three-pronged kunai into the air, before he fainted. "Kakashi?" Rin shook Kakashi awake. "Obito's gone." Kakashi's eyes widened. But Kakashi brought his hand up to touch the eye which had been irreparably injured earlier. Suddenly, he realized that he could see everything much clearer through that eye. End flashback. "Obito gave his eye to me," Kakashi finished. "I'd give both my eyes just to see him again. Though if there was anything that taught me." Kakashi looked at the two genin seriously. "Obito put me above himself. I know he could have asked Rin to heal him, but he got her to repair his eye instead. I'm not trying to live through you, but..." Quote. Naruto stood up and silently patted Kakashi on the shoulder. "Hey, sensei, we get it. In truth, we've always put each other above ourselves. Which is what we'll continue to do," Hikari confidently chimed in. Kakashi wiped a lone tear from his eye and gave them a smile which was visible even through his mask. "Alright then." Kakashi paused dramatically. "Who wants to learn a new jutsu?" Naruto grinned. "Me, pick me." "No, me," Hikari yelled. Kakashi laughed and ruffled their hair. "Tell you what, I'll teach you something that's usually reserved for Chunin." Kakashi took out 2 small pieces of paper and handed one piece to Naruto and another to Hikari. "Channel your chakra through that paper, and it'll allow us to determine your element so that we know what jutsu I should teach you." Naruto stared intently at the piece of paper, and channeled some chakra through it. Immediately, it split into 2 pieces, one of which burnt, while the other piece crumpled up. Kakashi stared at Naruto intently. "Interesting, you have 3 chakra natures. Fire, lightning, and wind. Fire is by far the most popular in Konoha, while wind and lightning are the least popular." Kakashi nodded. Hikari sighed as she channeled her chakra through the paper. She'd already gone through this before. The paper suddenly split into 2 pieces, one of which became soaked, the other disintegrating. "Wind, earth and water," Hikari stated. Kakashi nodded for a moment. "Well, that makes things easier. The two of you both have 3 different affinities, which each seem as strong as the next. In addition, your natures complement each other perfectly." Kakashi frowned for a moment. He suddenly fished a scroll out of his pocket and passed it to the two of them. "This scroll contains combination jutsu for this situation. It has jutsu for teams which have 2 or more opposing elements. It's said that those who can master the jutsu on this scroll will be able to defend each other perfectly, while easily killing off the enemy. There were only 2 other ninja who mastered the use of this scroll though." "Who were they?" Naruto asked. "Uzumaki Kushina, and Namikaze Minato." Kakashi winced. "Uzumaki?" Naruto repeated for a moment. "Is she still alive?" Kakashi regretfully shook his head. "I'm afraid she's dead, sorry Naruto." Naruto just gave Kakashi a weak smile in response, as he began to intently pore over the wisdom which the scroll brought. Kakashi gave the two of them a nod as he headed back to Tezuna's house to get some rest. Naruto frowned at the first technique. "Hey Hikari, you want to try out the first one?" Hikari looked at the scroll for a moment, before shrugging. "I suppose." Naruto and Hikari brought their hands up to form seals in tandem. As the two of them began to release their chakra, they felt a strange change occur to the very nature of said chakra. They continued to do so regardless, and both shouted out simultaneously, "Shapon! Ariton no Chinkanka!" Team release. Storm's Requiem. A small storm cloud suddenly formed over the two of them, and Naruto began to lose concentration as he stared in awe. Suddenly, the small cloud began to rain on the two. "What the hell?" Naruto muttered. Hikari stared at the clouds in obvious anger. She'd worn casual clothes today, which caused her clothes to stick to her skin as a result of the rain. So much for that, she muttered. I'm going in to change, Hikari told Naruto. She made the small mistake of looking at Naruto as she said the sentence, and her eyes subconsciously began to trail along Naruto's chest. Alright, Naruto replied. Luckily for both of them, he didn't look at Hikari. Hikari quickly ran into the house to change. Kakashi chuckled as he lay back in his bed. Naruto frowned as he went over the scroll again. It said that he was supposed to merge his lightning chakra, whatever that is, with Hikari's water chakra. As Naruto read further into that single technique, he was shocked to see how complicated it was. Apparently, he had to master lightning to such an extent that he could create magnetic fields. What he found most interesting though was some foreign writing on the scroll which said, "Don't be bound by common sense." Naruto sighed as he rolled up the scroll and went back into the house. Apparently, with all the time he'd spent poring over one technique, it was already lunchtime. Naruto quickly ran up to the room he'd shared with Hikari in order to put his scroll away. After he went back down, he was surprised to see that Kakashi was out of bed again. "Kakashi-sensei, will you be alright?" "I'll live," Kakashi replied. At that moment, Tsunami placed the food on the table, and they all began to eat. "So Kakashi-sensei, have you ever managed to perform a Shippan?" Naruto asked. Hikari placed her fork down and looked at Kakashi in curiosity. "Well, not really," Kakashi replied as he rubbed his head. "Only certain Junin are assigned teams with other Junin." "What are the conditions for that?" Hikari asked. She briefly noted that a small kid with black hair was further pulling his hat over his head as they spoke. "You have to either be really good team members, or really bad Junin." "Well, seems like Sasuke will be on a team if he ever makes Junin," Naruto joked. "That's true," Kakashi laughed. Suddenly, he gained a more serious tone. "I think you should know this. Zabuza isn't dead." Naruto stared gravely at Kakashi, while Hikari quietly listened as she ate. "What do you mean? Most hunter nin decapitate the corpse at the spot. Instead, this one disappeared with him," Kakashi explained. "It goes to reason that she probably put him in a near-death state with those senbon, and simply revived him afterwards. So we have to train more," Naruto sighed. "At least we'll learn some new techniques." "Why do you bother?" the little boy at the table mumbled. Naruto slowly turned his gaze towards the kid. "It's not as if you stand a chance against Gato. He'll just kill you. So would you rather we left you to die?" Naruto calmly asked. "Inari, don't." Tsunami hissed at her son. "Why die for somebody you don't even know? Are you trying to make yourself out to be a hero?" Inari scowled at Naruto. "Heroes don't even exist." "Really, kid? That's a damn shame. I suppose if heroes don't exist, then villains don't either?" Naruto smirked. "A true hero is somebody who fights for what they believe in." Naruto decided to imitate a technique he often saw the Hokage use, and he started to release small amounts of chakra. A hero is somebody who never gives up. Naruto's words seemed to reverberate through the room. A hero is somebody who'll trudge through a swamp filled with poisonous snakes just to save your sorry little ass. "Stop talking as if you understand what I'm going through," Inari yelled. "I bet you live a comfy life, coming home to your mom and dad every day." Naruto began to scowl, and the glass he was holding on to was visibly cracking. "I doubt you've ever starved, or been beaten. That did it." Naruto's glass broke, and he lost control over the chakra which he had been leaking out. Interestingly enough, this caused all the metal to fly towards Naruto, temporarily distracting him as Inari stormed upstairs. Naruto blinked as he saw various knives, forks and spoons flying towards him. Just as they were about to hit him and Naruto stopped leaking chakra, the silverware dropped. "I'm going for a walk," Naruto proclaimed as he stood up, completely ignoring the fallen silverware. The remaining people stared at Naruto's previous place in shock. Did he just manage to manipulate electrical chakra? Kakashi asked. Hikari nodded, completely dumbfounded. That was quick. Suddenly, her head snapped up. "I'm going to go after him." She quickly ran out the door. Kakashi sighed as he continued his meal. "Thank God for chopsticks," Kakashi mused. By then, Naruto was resting against a tree, looking at the dark clouds threatening to break on the horizon. As he continued to watch, he became aware of another presence. Naruto lowered his gaze to see a black-haired girl staring at him. Naruto lazily stared back at her, waiting for her to make the first move. He noticed the recognition as her eyes settled around his forehead protector, and back down to his face. He watched as the girl quietly left with her basket, and he brought his gaze back up to the sky. Ha, take that. I removed a cliché part of plotlines. After a while, Naruto noticed that Hikari was standing above him. Hikari deeply sighed. Let's train. Naruto nodded as he rushed Hikari. 1 week later, Naruto jumped to his feet as he was awakened by a large crash. He immediately threw on his shinobi gear and traveled down the stairs in one silent leap. He narrowed his eyes at what he saw. 2 bandits with heavily scarred faces were holding Tsunami hostage while Inari stared blankly at them. Naruto sighed as he jumped into view. Hey, it's a kid. What should we do with him? The tallest bandit asked his shorter counterpart, who looked at Naruto appraising ly. Let's scare him a little, the bandit replied. Naruto grinned as he held up his index finger. 1 finger. Huh? The bandits stared at him, dumbfounded. I'll beat you with 1 finger, Naruto finished. The bandits began to laugh, when they suddenly noticed that Naruto was no longer in plain sight. Suddenly, Naruto jumped into the view of the tallest bandit and jabbed his index finger into his eye. The bandit screamed in pain as Naruto used that same finger to poke him in the neck, rendering him unconscious. I wish that was actually possible. The other bandit took out a dagger and recklessly charged Naruto, who easily dodged. Naruto unexpectedly grinned as he held his index finger in the air. Ninpo. Senin no Kane Garashi. Ninja art. 1,000 years of metallic death. As Naruto's finger remained in the air, large amounts of metal began to cover his finger, and he grinned in pure sadistic pleasure as the metal formed a point. Naruto brandished the point, scaring the conscious bandit out of his wits. As he tried to run, Naruto's eyes glinted and he appeared behind the bandit. Kai! Naruto yelled, as he thrust his finger into the man's rectal cavity, quite easily tearing some very important organs, among them, his prostate gland. The man collapsed onto the floor, completely unconscious due to extreme amounts of pain. Naruto looked at the metal in disgust as he went to wash the blood off of it. As soon as he washed it, the metal collapsed into the sink and laid there. Well, I'm off to the bridge. Naruto nodded to a dumbfounded Inari and a shocked Tsunami. As Naruto neared the bridge, he frowned. He could see Zabuza and Kakashi fighting, yet he couldn't see Hikari. Where could she be? Try the huge ice mirrors over yonder. Hitomi rolled her eyes. Naruto nearly smacked himself in the head when he noticed the huge ice mirrors towering over a sign which read, Yonder. Naruto shook his head at the name. Likely something Tazuna had chosen while drunk. Naruto jumped towards the ice mirrors, completely confident that Kakashi could handle himself. Naruto paused for a moment when he saw Tazuna unguarded. Naruto tried to decide whether to help Hikari or guard Tazuna. To his immense fury, he couldn't. Try forming this seal. Hitomi sent him a mental picture of a seal which would have likely looked like a fox if it were held close to a light source. Imagine a clone which can take as many hits as you can. Naruto followed her instructions, and watched in surprise as a clone materialized. Instead of popping into existence as shadow clones often did, this one started out as a crimson maelstrom which slowly settled into a definite shape. Naruto nodded to the clone, which went to guard Tazuna. That was handy, Naruto mused as he jumped through the mirrors. Naruto frowned when he saw various senbon embedded into the ground. As he looked up, his eyes widened. Hikari had 3 senbon in her left arm, and there were 2 which had been embedded into her torso. Naruto gritted his teeth as he saw another 2 senbon fly towards her. Hikari managed to move out of the way despite the injuries she'd sustained. Naruto watched impassively as the senbon landed 3 centimeters away from him. He slowly moved his gaze upwards to the attacker, who seemed to be flitting between mirrors. The attacker suddenly threw another senbon at Hikari, who seemed unable to dodge. Snapping himself out of his reverie, Naruto tackled Hikari right before the senbon landed. Naruto winced as he saw the senbon embedded in his legs. Well, it looks like I have to save you, Naruto laughed. It sure does, Hikari replied. Watch out for the senbon, they'll paralyze you regardless of where they hit. Naruto shrugged. I noticed. He carelessly plucked the senbon out of his leg, quickly regaining the feeling thanks to his superhuman healing. Naruto brought his gaze up to meet the attacker. You see? Naruto started to explain as he began to get up. A while back, I promised that I'd protect the old man at all costs. He took out a kunai. I can tell that you won't back down. I know that I won't go back on my word. So I guess this has become a battle of willpower. I will not lose, the attacker replied. Naruto instantly deduced that the attacker was a female, from both the voice, posture, and the obvious smell of estrogen. He looked back at Hikari and winked, just as the female threw several senbon at him. Naruto deflected all the senbon with his kunai, and he carelessly ran towards the girl. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto yelled as he formed a seal, causing hundreds of clones to pop into existence. All of the Narutos attacked the girl and watched in shock as she suddenly vanished through the mirror and reappeared, vanquishing the senbon. Interesting, Naruto commented. He ran towards the attacker, dodging senbon as they were thrown at him. As Naruto was about to strike the mirror that the girl was hiding in, his eyes flitted to the side and he threw a kunai in that exact direction. The kunai struck the surprised girl, and she growled at him. I didn't want to have to use this. She rolled her sleeves away from her hands as she began to form seals with one hand. Sensatsu Suisho. Immediately, the water on the ground began to solidify, and it flew towards Naruto at high speeds. Naruto frowned and jumped out of the way. The senbon harmlessly landed on the ground and turned back into water. Naruto's eyes widened as several senbon flew towards his arms, paralyzing them both. He cursed himself for not watching, and he turned back to the girl. It won't happen again. It won't have to, she replied. She immediately threw several senbon at Hikari, and Naruto's eyes widened. Suddenly, the senbon moved towards him and embedded themselves in his legs. Naruto's knees buckled, and he found himself unable to move anything, save for his head. It was a good fight while it lasted, she sighed. Immediately, she brought her hands up again to form seals, and Naruto closed his eyes, waiting for the inevitable. After a moment, Naruto opened his eyes, to be shocked by what he saw. Hikari had somehow managed to get in the way of the senbon, and protect him with her body. Why? Naruto weakly asked. He was glad to see that none of the senbon had reached her neck, yet there were many around her torso. Hikari coughed and gave Naruto a smile. I can't stand by and watch you die. She blinked. I didn't even get to tell you how much I love you. Naruto's eyes widened exponentially as she fell towards the ground, and the enemy shinobi watched emotionlessly. Hikari's body hit the ground with a thud, snapping Naruto back to reality. He slowly stood up, completely ignoring the protest from his body. Naruto glared at Haku for a moment. You can hurt me, stab me, break me. His eyes began to turn orange, and his pupils became slits. But the day you touch Hikari-chan, Naruto released a feral growl and fell on all fours. Is the day you die.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.